Hello, Topical, and welcome back to your NBA coverage. We're right in the thick of the NBA Finals, so we have a not interesting discussion about that because, this is the fourth time we've had the Cavs Warriors on, so probably only going to talk about Game 1, to be honest, unless you just want to hear us get depressed about LeBron James and his no talent, but you've already heard about that in like the past five episodes, probably, maybe six. I don't know how long the playoffs have been going on exactly, but yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to have our long-awaited discussion of the All-NBA teams this year, what the NBA came up with, how much we hate what they come up with, and how our midseason projections would have been even better than what they could come up with at the end of the year, and how controversial my picks are, obviously. And I'm really curious to see what Aradh came up with because I always love his perspective on the NBA. Then after that, we'll see where we're at. Maybe we'll have time for a Hall of Fame discussion. Maybe we'll have time for a little thing I call free radical ideas about things that could be changed in the NBA. That'd be really cool. It may or may not involve changing the playoff structure. I know you guys always enjoy that. So, yeah, you ready to get started?
Yep, I am indeed.
All right, so coming to the NBA Finals right now, Game 3 was last night, and the Warriors are currently up 3-0 to nobody's surprise, keeping in line my prediction for the sweep by the Warriors. And yeah, as most people would imagine, Game 1 was incredibly competitive because it seems like every series LeBron plays in, he has a very competitive Game 1. I can't figure the last time he's had a bad Game 1 performance, but yeah, like this is kind of what we expected going into the finals, unfortunately. And Game 1 was awesome. It was overtime, so, it was good. But games 2 and 3 were pretty terrible. And it seems like a lot of the factors for LeBron James winning in the finals currently are just completely out of his hands and may or may not be in JR's hands, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, game one was it was brilliant up until the blunder at the end there. I thought throughout the game itself, it really went and like the one thing that like watching the game, that what stood out to me the most is like you see all these stars on the court at the same time, and then you see Steph Curry, you see Kevin Durant, you see LeBron James, you see Klay Thompson, you see Draymond Green, you see Kevin Love, and that's right there is that's six All Stars across two teams, and they're playing in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. And the craziest thing to me about it is, I mean, I'm really not sure how many people would disagree with me on this as far as Game 1 goes, specifically. Like LeBron James, just when he's fully engaged and he's on, and he's shooting well from distance, and when he's fully engaged defensively, when his jump shot is falling, basically when he's having his best game, to me it's just not even close that he's far and away the best player in the world. Because just watching the game one, it's like you see Durant and Curry, who are arguably the second and third best players in the world, and then you see LeBron, and the gap to me is just so big that like he just looked like a man amongst boys, basically. Like, I mean, Durant had a good game. I think I'm not sure if he had 26 or 29, but he had like 26, 9 and 6, or 29, 9 and 6, or something like that. And it just wasn't even close because he didn't, given he really didn't shoot well, but Durant didn't shoot well. But I mean, LeBron just he played as well of a game as I've ever witnessed. I mean, it's probably the best individual. I'm trying to think of a better individual game performance that I've watched, because I believe he shot like 60 something percent as well. He had 51 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. I think he had 3 steals and a block as well.
Yeah, certainly not in recent history. Like something that comes to mind just from the 2000s at least was what's his name? Why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Allen Iverson in Game 1 against the
Oh,
Lakers.
I mean, yeah, Iverson, yeah, in recent years, because I mean, I understand like James Harden had a 60-point triple double, but he was playing the Magic, and it was a regular season game, and I know like James Harden also had 53, 17, and 16 against the Knicks, last season, and I know Russell Westbrook's had 58 points and 16 rebounds and 15 assists against like the Magic, or that was that the 60-point triple double from Harden and the 58-point triple double from Westbrook were actually both against the Magic. So poor Orlando. But yeah, but the difference to me basically is like when you see Harden and when you see James Harden and Russell Westbrook do have their phenomenal statistical performances like that, as Westbrook specifically, really he never does it efficiently. Harden does sometimes do it efficiently. Other times he'll have a lot of points, but he won't do it as efficiently as LeBron would. And I mean, to me, his game one performance was as good of a game as I've seen him play. He had a really hot hand from even from like in terms of his mid range jump shooting, and he was pretty good from three as well. I think he shot 3 of 7 from three in game one. But then obviously nobody can keep him from the rim when he really wants to get there. And then it was weird. Draymond Green hit him in the eye, and his eye was bleeding, and it really didn't seem to have that much of an effect on him. Game one was fantastic, and then obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, at the end, the Cavs are tied 107 to 107. George Hill, or they're down 106 to 107. George Hill's at the free throw line with 4.7 seconds left. He makes the first free throw. He misses the second free throw, so the game is tied. J.R. Smith grabs an offensive rebound off the missed free throw, and then he dribbles out. He dribbles 3.5 seconds out of the 4.7 seconds because he thinks that they're leading by one instead of being tied. Passes to George Hill, and George Hill gets his jump shot blocked. So, I mean, it was a sad thing to watch. It was really upsetting. But at the end of the day, like my silver lining of when watching it was maybe even if the Cavs got a shot off, maybe they wouldn't have made it because if LeBron was forced to take a jump shot, or if George Hill had to take a jump shot, or even if JR had to make like a sidestepping floater or something, maybe Durant still would have gotten back in the picture and been able to alter the shot or something. So I try not to think too much about what could have happened had JR shot the ball or gotten it into LeBron's hands at times because, even though LeBron James has made 2 game winners thus far in the playoffs, I wouldn't just assume that he would knock down a third one in game one of the finals because I'm sure Draymond Green would be nearby or someone would be, at least contested late. So I really didn't think too much about that. Then game 2 was, speaking on overtime, LeBron actually really didn't. I feel like after the J.R. Smith incident, he really kind of disengaged. I feel like he was sort of defeated mentally and was just like, oh, wow, like I scored 51, 8 and 8, and my teammates can't even be competent enough to remember the score. So I feel like he was just sort of deflated, and then he got off to a slow start in overtime. He didn't take a shot until 2 minutes and 26 seconds left in overtime. He went 0 for 4 from the field, and he only scored 2 points off free throws. But what was a shame about it was KD and I think he was either KD and Steph or KD and Clay or Steph and Clay, some combination of those three. I think they only combined for 5 points, and then the other one I think had maybe like 6 or 7 or something. So they got outscored 17-7 in overtime, and that was the game. So it was just unfortunate. I think the Warriors were sort of thriving off the fact that, oh wow, like we played a pretty, like they have no stars and they played us evenly, and like they were about to beat us, but we got a break, and I feel like they just had a lot more energy because. They also have 4 stars, so they don't have to depend on one player throughout the game to kind of, sustain their effort and hold them all the way. So that happened. Then in game 2, I was a little bit disappointed in LeBron because, it's a shame that I have to criticize a player who had 29 points, 13 assists, and 9 rebounds in an NBA Finals game while shooting 50%. But, given what he's shown us this playoffs, obviously you want to expect a little bit more because, they ended up. The weird thing about that game was it sort of felt like Cleveland was they were nearby, but for some reason, like it just felt like the entire way through that Cleveland was just kind of dragging through the game to get back to Cleveland. And obviously they came back to bite them because they ended up getting blown out at the end of the game despite being able to keep it relatively close, through the first 3 quarters or so. They actually outscored the Warriors 34-31 in the second quarter, I believe. And then they just got annihilated in the fourth, I think, because they were all on fumes or whatever. And Durant equaled LeBron's production in that game in terms of scoring. And he shot actually more efficiently than LeBron did. He shot 10 of 14, whereas LeBron shot 10 of 20. So Durant was able to sort of, mitigate LeBron's impact in game 2. And I sort of feel like, Cleveland had thrown in the psychological towel for game 2. I feel like it was just a carryover from the fact that they should have stolen game 1 and they weren't able to. So game 2, there's really not that much to discuss. Steph Curry, obviously, he sent the finals record 9 threes in the game. That was actually really cool to watch. I'm not a Warriors fan, but you can't deny Steph Curry's brilliance. He was shooting some crazy, falling away threes off balance at the end of the shot clock, and it was weird because like even though they were crazy shots, it was still like, damn, those are going to go in. So that happened, and then obviously game 3 was last night, which I watched up until For me personally, I still felt like even though the Cavs were in the game, I sort of felt like from the jump after the Warriors, the Cavs led by 12 early, and then when they cut the lead to one, the Warriors did. I sort of was like, okay, like the Warriors are just gonna, they're just gonna do it. Like they're just gonna pull this game out at the end, and then. Obviously, I give a lot of credit to Kevin Durant. He carried them in the game three last night because Steph Curry was shooting very poorly. He was one of 10 or one of 11 going into the fourth quarter. Finished the game 3 of 16 and only made one 3-pointer. I think he shot 1 of 10 or 1 of 11 from three. I can't remember. But he was 3 of 16 from the field. Klay Thompson and him, I think, combined for only 21 points. Steph had 11. Klay had 10. And meanwhile, the Cavs actually did have some, they had some help for LeBron yesterday. Kevin Love, I believe, had 22 or 20, and then J.R. Smith, I think, had 15, and I think Rodney Hood had 13 or 15 as well. But unfortunately, it just goes to show that Durant I think he's really worthy of being called the second best player in the world. I think he showed that on any given night, um, he's capable of being the best player in the world. I'm obviously not. I'm not ready to crown him the best player in the world simply because I don't believe that he can do it on a consistent level. And obviously, we saw that last series and at the first two games of this series, where Durant is very prone to being able to go off and have a magnificent game, but I don't think he's capable of sustaining that to a point where he can actually carry a team, which is why I personally have LeBron over him, as I believe most people do. But I mean, that doesn't take away from the fact that he did, in my opinion, he outplayed LeBron James like yesterday. LeBron James had 33, 10, and 11, but he only shot, I think, 46% from the field. And that's a fantastic game, but given his standards, like I mentioned earlier, it's crazy the standard that he set for himself to the point where 33, 10, and 11 on 46% shooting is considered a bad game for him. And that's only because Durant had 43 points on, I think, 60 something percent shooting, 67% shooting from three, and 100% from the free throw line. So Durant had 43, 13, and 6 or something like that. And, he outplayed LeBron yesterday, and unfortunately it just came at the worst possible time for, Kevin Durant to finally go off. And, it justifies the move by the Warriors to bring him to Golden State, and it justifies his decision to go there. So now I really feel like the only discussion left for the finals is who's going to win Finals MVP. Are they going to give it to Kevin Durant for hitting a dagger and making them go up 3-0 again, or are they going to give it to Steph Curry, who is the reason that they won the first two games? So, I mean, Game 4 is going to be the deciding factor, I believe, because I think if Durant has another fantastic game and carries them to a victory in Game 4, then it's going to be Kevin Durant's Finals MVP. But if he comes back down to earth and Steph Curry has but if he just has a pretty good game and has let's say close to 30 points on, over 50% shooting, then he's probably going to take home the Finals MVP. So it'll be interesting. I don't really think any legacies are on the line, though. I feel like even if Steph Curry doesn't win a Finals MVP, at this point he'll have won 3 championships in 4 years. He already has 2 MVPs. One is unanimous. So I feel like regardless of what happens in terms of who wins Finals MVP, I think both Kevin Durant and Steph Curry have solidified their greatness. And we'll discuss this, I'm sure, at some point later. But this is good for them because I think Steph Curry, at this point, in terms of his greatness, not his individual talent as a player, but just in terms of his greatness and his resume, I really feel like this championship will probably, it'll push him into that, top 3 to top 5 in terms of greatest point guards ever. I personally wouldn't rank him among the most talented point guards ever because, my evaluation of a point guard is still more about how much better do you, how I still kind of assess it at the pure point guard level where I kind of think about your assist to turnover ratio and how much you pass and, more of like the Magic Johnson, Chris Paul, John Stockton type of point guard. So I personally wouldn't rank him there because I still evaluate Steph Curry. To me, he's still his skill set is just sort of like an amazing shooting guard masquerading as a point guard. And he plays point guard obviously because of his size. But having said that, in terms of the greatest point guards ever, he's going to have 3 NBA championships. He's going to have 2 MVPs. He's going to have multiple All NBA selections, multiple All Star selections. Already a member of the 50-40-90 club one time. He holds all the 3-point records basically, and he's going to end up holding all of them. So, he's really established himself as probably a top 3 greatest point guard ever. And then Durant, in my opinion, I mean, I think after he has two NBA championships and two Finals MVPs, assuming he wins the Finals MVP, which I personally feel like at this point it's kind of swayed to be him because if you just look at their averages and how much they've contributed throughout the series, Durant has actually done more than Steph, even though he's had quieter nights in the first two games. So I think Durant will take home Finals MVP. And once he has two NBA championships and two Finals MVPs before the age of 30, that gives him, another 6 to 6, somewhere between 5 to 8 year window of winning a few more. And I think that'll probably catapult him to, being considered a top 10 player of all time because, in my estimation, simply because I think that, I mean, I watch him play and he's probably the most gifted scorer just in terms of all the things that he can do. I wouldn't say necessarily he's the best scorer because, obviously you have people will love to argue Kobe Bryant, people love to argue Michael Jordan, and obviously you'll have, the people who are like, oh, there's Wilt though. Wilt Chamberlain had 800 points and all that stuff. So I personally think Durant will be considered at some point in time a top 10 because in my personal top 10 list, there's actually a void in number 10 because I can really only go to 9 because, I've got like LeBron, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kobe Bryant, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Hakeem Olajuwon, and I think Will Chamberlain, and then I have like a gap at somewhere in there where I'm really missing someone, and I think Durant will be able to do that because he's also already shot a 50, 40, 90. He has an MVP. He has 4 scoring titles. He's going to have 2 championships and 2 Finals MVPs. And then I really feel he's going to end up with more championships. He's probably going to end up with maybe 4 or 5 by the end of his career because I'm sure even after this whole Golden State thing finally ends, he's probably going to go somewhere else and win a couple more. And just based on his skill, he's one of the most gifted players just in terms of his ability to score the ball and also rebound. At this point, he's being viewed as a better defender. So it's good for the Warriors and good for all of their legacies because obviously it also elevates Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Draymond Green will always be seen as the core of their defense. He has a Defensive Player of the Year already. He'll have 2 NBA championships. Klay Thompson, second or third greatest shooter of all time, depending on how you look at Ray Allen. He's going to have 2 championships as well. So it's really good for all the Warriors, but obviously I was rooting for LeBron, so it's not the greatest thing in the world for me, but at the end of the day, I don't really think that it affects LeBron in terms of his legacy because everybody expected him to lose, and all the level-headed people aren't really going to hold this against him because they understand that he basically played the first game one on 4 and almost won. He almost single-handedly beat them, and then in Game 3, he just unfortunately lost a duel at the wrong time. So yeah, I think that the finals are what we expected them to be. I still expect Cleveland to win one game. Just, I think they'll win Game 4 and then drop it in 5, just like they did last year, gentleman's sweep, just because I feel like, I don't know, there's just something, I just don't see LeBron James getting swept. I just feel like I feel like he won't allow it. I feel like he'll probably just be like, okay, no, like I have to win at least one game. And I feel like the pride of the team in general will be like, okay, like we made the finals. We can't just get swept because then everyone's going to be like, oh, the Rockets should have been in the finals. The West Finals should just be the finals and all that. So I think they'll rally and win one game and then, they'll end up losing in 5. But none of that really matters. I think now the whole question about the NBA is really just where LeBron's going to go.
Yep.
Nobody really cares about Game 4. I think everybody, and I really feel like even if Cleveland had won yesterday, I still feel like the question would be the same. Nobody would expect them to win. People would probably just take the Warriors to win in either 6 or 5. Had Cleveland won yesterday, I really don't think it would make a difference. So that's that. That's really all I have to say about the finals. It was disappointing, but I mean, it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's just it allows us to get to free agency sooner and see where LeBron's going to go.
Okay, that's all you have to say. Okay, so sorry about that. It brings up something I was exposed to the other day. Where when I like to listen to podcasts when I'm driving in the car, and I've noticed something where like if I get home or something, like I feel like I have to wait until the person stops talking before like I get out of the car, and I hope to God that none of our viewers are like that because Jesus Christ, a 13-minute monologue. It was awesome, and I always love that you do that. But yeah, I don't know how your voice doesn't get tired. That's incredible. Okay,
Yeah.
so just to address all of those points. So on the point about Game 1, obviously LeBron incredible, 51, 8, and 8. That's seriously the best finals performance I can think of since either one of his in 2015 or Allen Iverson's in Game 1, obviously beating the Lakers dynasty and setting up a gentleman's sweep in 2000, but or 2001, whatever, doesn't make a difference. But yeah, JR kind of blew that game for them. I'm of the belief that he easily could have gotten a putback, but obviously he could have missed the dunk or not dunk. Why did I say dunk? The layup, because Durant was right there. The other center for the Warriors, who was on the court at that time, was right there. Obviously, he could have missed it, just as he could have dribbled it out and had LeBron pointing like a maniac at the basket, or he could have gotten an over the back foul when he was jumping up over Durant to try and get that ball. I was a little surprised he didn't actually get that because he was kind of flailing everywhere there. But I guess you can't give an over the back foul in the last 5 seconds of the NBA Finals Game 1. But yeah, that sucked for LeBron. That happens. I don't know if you saw. I forget who put it up exactly, but there was a 3-minute uncut video of what was happening in their arena during the commercial break after that play happened, and it was just focused on LeBron the entire time, and he just looked completely destroyed, and it was a good reminder of how much you miss by going to a commercial break, and it's like, okay, and we're back, and you just miss everything that's happening for all the players. And
I remember, I saw it as well. It's like he looked completely drained when he found out that they had a timeout and they didn't use it.
Oh yeah, like him asking the coach, and yeah, that was terrible. But no, you couldn't expect Tyronn Lue to have realized what was going on. I don't think anyone realized what was going on at the time. But yeah, it sucked, and obviously it's almost impossible to pull yourself together and play the Warriors for another 5 minutes and keep it close. I still think it's a little embarrassing to give up 17 points in an overtime period. I was kind of surprised that wasn't a record for overtime period in the finals. Be curious to see what that would be, but yeah, that's not good, and that was not setting up a good thing for the Cavs. Obviously, we all saw the pictures on, I don't know, Instagram or ESPN or whatever social media you were on. That LeBron and when he's down 0-2 in series in the playoffs, he's 3-4 or 4-3 or whatever it was, and the rest of the NBA is 17 and 122 or whatever crazy number it was. So obviously he still had a chance after losing Game 2 as well. Don't really have anything to say on that aside from good for Steph Curry. I don't really care about that free points record because it's only 9 and that doesn't seem that much, but whatever. But going into Game 3, I think we both were hoping that the Cavs would actually win that game, and kind of at least I expected to. So yeah, them losing it in not even spectacular fashion. It wasn't some otherworldly game by LeBron. It was obviously an incredible game. He got a 30-point triple-double, but that's kind of expected at this point, which demonstrates how amazing he is. But it is expected, and it's a shame. So down 0-3 in the series, hopefully he can win Game 4 just to save face a little bit. But at this point, I don't think anyone cares if he loses in 4 games or 5 games, because all they care about is the Lakers rumors, or is he going to go to the Warriors, or just a bunch of bullcrap that he's probably making up to sidetrack people and get a little more attention on his brand. But yeah, just that's all anyone is really talking about at this point, is where he is actually gonna end up, and not what's actually happening in the series, because it's kind of presumptive that the Warriors are going to win at this point. Would have been fascinating if it went to after Game 4 it was tied up 2-2, but I'm not convinced people would care at that point, just because the Warriors would have 2 home games. So yeah, that's pretty much the NBA final. Oh, and on the discussion about Durant versus Curry for MVP, I can't think of a much less meaningful award than the Finals MVP. I don't really know any player that gets mad props for being a Finals MVP. Maybe Michael Jordan for being 6 for 6 in Finals MVP, but I don't think most people care about that. I think it's mostly just winning the championship. So yeah, don't really care, to be honest. I mean, it's probably tied, but I mean, yeah, so it'll come down to who does better in Game 4. But let's be honest, LeBron James probably should get it as the losing player. Obviously, the only time a losing player in North American sports has won the finals or championship MVP was, I believe, Desmond Howard in Super Bowl IV, I think. I might be pulling that out of my butt, but I think that's correct. But yeah, like it just never happens, and certainly doesn't happen today because like it's presumed that like the award goes to the winning team. So yeah, that's unfortunate for LeBron, obviously losing in our finals, but luckily it won't do too much to his legacy at this point. So yeah, that's. Oh, sorry, you got it.
I said I agree.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all we have on the finals. I think not too much to say. It's gone basically exactly how we thought it would. Oh, and one thing I was noticing when I was looking through the basketball reference page for the games, LeBron James has had amazing defensive rating numbers. In game 3, he had 125 compared to players like Kevin Durant, who had 112, Klay Thompson 124, Draymond Green 102, and that's game 1 actually. In game 2, he had a 130 compared to none of the Warriors starters had higher than 115. And then game 3, he had a where is he? Oh, it's a road game, so he's at the bottom of the page. Only a 115, which makes sense because they didn't have as good of a defensive performance against the Warriors in that game. But yeah, he's been amazing at defense in the entire playoffs, and that's been awesome to see because one of the first things that goes is your defense when you're fatigued because you obviously have to prioritize offense. So that's been really good to see that he's not absolutely destroyed after playing like essentially 45 minutes per game and throughout the playoffs so far. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the coming seasons if it starts to catch up to him because eventually it has to. So yeah, that's not going to be fun to see. Do you want to address the free agency rumors for LeBron right now, or should we save that for a later time?
I mean, I don't think we have to. Well, I mean, I really feel like the only ones to discuss are like there's the only ones to discuss. I guess there's Philadelphia, Houston.
Well, no, I mean the ones that he's been like name dropping at this point. So like the Lakers won, the Warriors won. I don't know if there's been any others that have been coming up in the news lately, but just like the ones that keep coming up here, not like the ones that we think it's gonna happen.
All right, 1 second, Ryan. My mother's calling me.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll address that then. So I would hate it if LeBron went to the Lakers, as I've said many times. I want to see the Lakers crash and burn and never be good again. I would love if he just thumbed his nose at the Lakers and went to the Clippers or something. That'd be absolutely awesome to see. Maybe even brought back Chris Paul. That'd be pretty cool. And they just beat up on the Lakers the entire time. That would be so great. But that's obviously not going to happen. And then on the subject of him going to the Warriors, I don't think there's any chance of that happening. And obviously, I'll take my words back if he does end up on the Warriors next year. And we're singing the praises of the greatest dynasty in NBA history. But I don't think LeBron is exactly a front runner, so it doesn't seem like him to just jump on a team that's already been winning. All right, cool. But yeah, I told them that I would hate to see him on the Lakers, and I would love to see him on the Clippers just to thumb his nose at the Lakers, and that it makes absolutely no sense for him to go on the Warriors. And I don't even know why that's being something that's name dropped.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know that the rumors have been kind of weird lately. I think like Stephen A. Smith has said like he's going to meet with the Celtics and Warriors and Sixers and Lakers and Rockets and stuff. But I mean, I really feel like with LeBron, you don't know until you know. I'm not going to speculate too much. The only thing I can say is that if I were him, I would really only consider Houston, Philadelphia, and San Antonio because I just feel like he deserves to play with a player like Kawhi Leonard and a coach like Greg Popovich. But other than that, I mean, I really don't have much to say about it. I hope he doesn't go to Los Angeles. I feel like people are overrating Paul George's value.
Oh, yeah.
I really think he's that good. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say about his free agency. I really hope that he doesn't cash in on and expect Paul George to be his Scottie Pippen or anything because, I mean, Paul George has shown that he can be just as unreliable as anyone on Cleveland in big situations. He had 5 points and 6 turnovers in the last game against Utah and shot 2 for 16 from the field. So
yeah.
He's very capable of disappearing in big situations as well. So I wouldn't trust Paul George as your running mate to an NBA Finals.
Yeah, honestly, I would consider taking Kevin Love over Paul George unless he has some hope of actually making Paul George into someone that's reliable. Because yeah, he's incredibly flaky.
Paul George he'd be a wonderful teammate to have in the regular season because I mean he played perfectly alongside LeBron, but I mean Paul George has never been a very reliable player in clutch situations, and he's not a big game player. I really can't think of any game. I really can't think of a big game that Paul George has played in that he played well in. So
Yeah.
it's a shame to say that, but I mean he's also really not that efficient of a scorer. Like he averaged 22 points per game this year, but he actually shot a worse percentage from the field than Russell Westbrook.
Oh,
I feel like
that's bad.
he shot 43% from the field, which is not good. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and also overrated on defense. I don't know why everyone thinks that he's amazing or something. He's no Klay Thompson. But yeah.
I think it's just because he's long and he's a good defender.
I mean, yeah, he's good, but like people say he's like a top 5 at the
Yeah,
floor.
like you never see him like locking like anyone. Like you never see him shut someone off defensively or save a play defensively. Like, see, the thing is, like Klay Thompson can save a play defensively. Draymond Green can save a play defensively. Jimmy Butler can save a play defensively. LeBron and Durant, when engaged, can save a play defensively. But he's just kind of like, it's like he's a good defender, but as soon as he gets blown by, or it's like that's it. Like it's like once you have an offensive player good enough to get past him, you don't have an issue with him as a defender. Like he's not like a pesky defender. He's just a good defender who does a good job of staying in front of them. And obviously, that's aided by the fact that he's 6'9" with a long wingspan. But it is what it is. Paul George is he's a B-level player.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So yeah.
Okay.
Which is why he shouldn't be on the All-NBA second team.
No, he shouldn't. I'll give a little spoiler. He's actually on my All-NBA. Crap, let me make sure I'm right here. I don't want to be wrong about this. Oh, it's worse than I thought. He's on my All-NBA 5th team. So
yeah, no, he made All-NBA 3rd team. Sorry, not second team, but still. So yeah, we can get into that now.
Yeah, good segue.
I gave us a segue. So yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we can get right into things then. So I guess we should start with our methodology, because I know, at least for me, I change every time, and feel like I improve every time as well. So I guess I'll start with mine. So here, I'll start with what I did at the midseason All-NBA projections, because I think it's an interesting comparison to what I did now, because I feel like I made a huge improvement. So just to read the paragraph that I have here. So the objective of the following is to represent what the author Ryan Moret thinks the All-NBA team should look like, and does not represent what he thinks it will look like. These projections are entirely based on the opinion of the author, the stats listed in the compare tool on NBA.com, and their net rating stats, per 100 possessions box score stats, and per ratings for players all equally rated. And then I have a little disclaimer at the bottom. The expressed opinions are entirely for fun and should not be used or held responsible in the event of making a financial decision, i.e. sports betting or marketing. So there's that. I wasn't happy with how I did that at all, so I completely overhauled how I did it this year, and not this year, I guess this quarter, really. It's been like 3 months. So here's what I did this time. So the 2017-2018 end-of-the-year All-NBA teams were determined based on the average Z-score of a player's performance in Basketball Reference's free advanced amalgamation statistics win shares with win shares per 48 minutes added, box score plus minus, and value over replacement player as compared to all players to compete in the NBA that year. This methodology is strong since it utilizes a variety of advanced metrics and is equal parts rate performance evaluation with box score plus minus and win shares per 48 minutes, and overall production with win shares and VORP. This approach has the advantage of assisting a player who was particularly impressive, though may not have had as many minutes in a given season, likely due to injury, as can be seen as in later examples of Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler, but also gives a strong preference to players who play a ton in the NBA. So that's my methodology. Obviously, I'm much happier with that because I love the fact that I'm equally valuing the rate performance and the overall performance. I think that's very important, and the fact that a lot of people, the problem that they make, and this is something that I often do way too often, is they overvalue one advanced metric and they don't look at the whole picture. So by averaging 4 different ones, or really 3 base ones, I feel like I get a much stronger idea of what exactly the player did in their performance. So what do you have?
So I guess just to give the listeners like an idea, because now that you've explained how you were going to be evaluating and how you assigned the players that you have in your All NBA teams. So just a quick word on how I valued mine and how I assessed mine. So I sort of I didn't go into any advanced metrics and I didn't take a look at the advanced statistics. I sort of just took, like I just sort of looked at the teams that were actually released and all the players who received votes, and I looked at all of those players because I think generally all of the players who received votes are players that I would have on my team. But not the players who made the team, but every player who received votes. That would generally be the pool that I would be selecting from. But basically, the biggest evaluation, the biggest change that I made from how the actual NBA does it to how I'm assessing this is I take into I take an individual performance like much more than what a player was able to do with their team, because you have players like Devin Booker, for example, who averaged 25 points per game and statistically had a better season than players like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns, Victor Oladipo, stuff like that. You have players who like that are individually much better, but because of their lack of team success, they're not even considered and don't even receive votes for the All NBA teams, which I just think that's absurd and I think that's stupid. So basically, in assessing it, what I did instead was I just sort of took a look at how well a player performed statistically, and I really didn't think too much about how their team performed. And then I also thought, but then also, I factored in like my common sense and just so like for example, I'm not going to have a player like Russell Westbrook on my All NBA first team just because he's very good statistically. I also factored in whether or not you are the reason that your team loses games, because obviously you have a player like Russell Westbrook who's quite literally responsible for like at least 10 losses that they have on the season and stuff like that. So I sort of just took a look at who I feel would be better in different situations and who I think performed well under, the more difficult circumstances, and who was kind of able to, who really deserves to be considered like, if you need one, like if you need a player, like if you're basically like if the world is going to war and you need to pick 5 players on a team and that you have to go play and they have to win the game no matter what, or else the world gets destroyed, who are the players that you want? So I really took it with an iron approach and was just like, I'm not going to have like all these, these like fiddly players and stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to be taking more of a hard-nosed approach to it, I guess.
A real Otto Van Bismarck, then.
Yes.
Okay, well, I unfortunately didn't do that, so you're going to see weird idiosyncrasies like Klay Thompson not being on any of my defensive teams, which is bizarre. I guess the advanced metrics don't like him that much. I'd be really interested to actually dig into why the advanced metrics don't like him, but yeah, I felt like it was more important to have a streamlined approach where everything was based on the methodology, and if the methodology is flawed, I can always tweak it some other time, but just to have no wiggle room on it, just go straight by the metrics, and I think for the most part they did pretty well. So I guess we can get into things with that whole, I guess, prelude right there. So for me, one of the biggest things that I was noticing with my All-NBA team was, well, first of all, I guess we should say the All-NBA team works differently than the All-Defensive and All-Rookie teams, which we're also going to be going over, in that each team is constructed with 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. So it does take into account the player's position, and that occasionally does matter, like 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, actually, where James Harden missed out on, no, it was 2 years ago, where James Harden missed out on the All-NBA third team because he was a point guard and not a forward. But for me, I use this to my advantage to cram a lot of centers onto my teams, and when I say I try to, I just went based on what the metrics said. If Anthony Davis served better as a forward than a center, as in he would be on a higher team if he was treated as a forward than a center, I treated him as a forward. So I never harmed, and like anytime I had a hybrid player, I tried to give him the best positioning that I could. And if that happened to hurt a player that only played one position, well, sorry, you only play one position, buddy. I'm not going to give you any special privileges just because of that. So that's something that I noticed a lot, and it's going to get interesting very quickly because I think there might be some divergence because of that. Was that something that you encountered a lot?
Well, I really didn't. So in my evaluation, I did it not position. Like, okay, I did 2 guards for each team, and then after I did the 2 guards for each team, I really just looked at the entire pool because I feel like in my first team, for example, if Anthony Davis is considered a forward, then I don't have a center, because like I didn't really encounter too much of an issue with it because I feel like there are enough big men in the league to the point where you can have someone like as you know. I feel like you can have like a big man on your All NBA team just because I feel like, or when I was assessing it, at least I found enough big men that I wanted on my All NBA teams to where it really wasn't an issue. But I can see why that would have been a problem if you're looking at it from the way that you are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can get right into things then. So I guess we'll start by reading off our first teams then. So for me, my first guard I had, and obviously this is going to be with guard one being the highest rated guard, and then guard two being the next highest rated. I remembered to write it down that way. So for guard one, I had James Harden, which makes sense. He's the MVP favorite right now. Guard two, I had Russell Westbrook, because unlike you, I did not care if he's a bad teammate or like whatever. I said he averaged triple double again, and that advanced metrics like him, and they happen to like his defensive performance because he gets a lot of blocks and steals. So I'm going to give him credit for that. So that was my second guard. Obviously, forward one, I had LeBron James. That was a complete no-brainer. Forward two, I had Anthony Davis because he would have lost out to the center here and would have been on the second team. And then that center was actually Karl Anthony Towns, which you should be really happy about. He was awesome this season by advanced metrics, and even by normal metrics, he was amazing in the post. He scored a ton at the rim. He was really reliable defensively when Jimmy Butler was on the court, which happened for like, 56 games. So that was something that you could really expect. And like, yeah, he just had an amazing season, and that went kind of underrated, honestly. And yeah, I gave him the first team slot because of that.
All right, I understand. So now that I'll get into my NBA first team, basically we're gonna see some contrast in the players that we have. So basically, just another thing that I factored into it is sort of the degree of difficulty that each player faced in the season, and how well would they have been able to perform had they not been in a situation as bright as the one that they were in. So that's also something that I took into consideration. So, for example, I'll go ahead and say this already. Kevin Durant is not on my All-NBA first team, and the reason for that being that I just feel as if anybody could have his numbers and his sort of performance throughout the entire regular season if they were on that stacked of a team. So he's someone that I ignored. But getting into my NBA first team, I actually have my forwards are Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then my two guards are James Harden and Damian Lillard. And the reason that I have Damian Lillard and the reason that I kept him on my All-NBA first team, because he did make All-NBA first team this year, which I know some people don't really feel like he should be there. But the reason that I say that he should be is because he was so. I feel like if you had put Damian Lillard in a situation like Steph Curry, if you put him with the Warriors, right? Or if you put him in a situation like Russell Westbrook was on the Thunder with Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, I truly feel like he would be able to do just as much as Steph Curry. Not, he wouldn't be able to give you the same light show type performances, but he would be able to sustain that team to the point where they would still be winning a high number of games. And I do feel he would have handled Russell Westbrook's situation much better playing with a player like Paul George. So I kept Damian Lillard there. And another reason why I kept Damian Lillard there was just because of the lack of guards. I just felt like DeMar DeRozan, he isn't consistent enough as a shooter or as a perimeter threat overall, either offensively or defensively. I feel like he's sort of a one-trick pony, and as a result of that, I just couldn't bring myself to say that he's a top two guard in the league. And then I left Steph Curry off of there also because if it was a regular season for him, I'm sure he would have made it on my All NBA first team, but he was injured this season, and he didn't shoot as well this year as he has in years past, so I left him off. And then James Harden, obviously MVP candidate, he played fantastic this year. So James Harden, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Damian Lillard, and then Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that's identical to the actual All NBA first team, other than I have Giannis in for Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
that's my first team.
Yeah, and really it's very little change between us because for all the ones that you ended up choosing, they were the runner-ups for the first team for me. So it really isn't going to make that much of a difference. So I'm curious to see who you're going to have instead. Probably just Russell Westbrook for Damian Lillard, and then I don't know, maybe Karl Anthony Towns, but we'll see how he makes it on yours. For anyone curious, we're going to go through the actual All NBA team after we go through all of our All NBA teams to conclusion and then look at how it changed from the midseason projections. So, yeah. Okay, for my second team, I had Damian Lillard for my first guard. He had an awesome season, and he was propped up by his forwards and centers being really good defensively, so he didn't have that hindering him this year. So, great season for him. Close to Russell Westbrook, but yeah, he didn't make the first team in my book. Second guard was Chris Paul. I don't think this is a controversial choice at all. I think he had an amazing season. A bit underrated, honestly, just because James Harden got so much press, but yeah, he was amazing as well. His same amazing self, amazing teammates around him. So yeah, my first forward was Giannis because Giannis was really good, and I think you have to consider his offense being absolutely amazing, considering how poorly he did defensively, which was weird because he is one of the lengthiest players in the league. So you would think he'd be really good defensively, but this year he had a down year. It's kind of like Kawhi last year when he just had a down year for really no reason. I know a lot of people had complaints about Jason Kidd's defensive scheming and kind of chalked it up to that, but he still sucked under Joe Prunty on defense. So yeah, I guess he was just really amazing on offense. And then for my second forward, I had Kevin Durant. I imagine he'll be on your second team as well. I mean, he's really good, and that's why he made it. He's just a really good player, and he didn't make the first team because obviously he's surrounded by great teammates, but he's still an amazing player and one of the best pure scorers in NBA history. So yeah, I thought he deserved it in that regard. And then my center, continuing with the trend of bit not controversial picks, but a bit surprise picks. I have Nikola Jokic, actually. I think he had an amazing season, and nobody is giving him credit for that. He almost made the playoffs, missed out on the playoffs with 46 wins, I believe, maybe 45. Doesn't really matter. The point is he had a ton of wins, didn't make the playoffs. He propped up a team that wasn't that great around him. Sure, it has Paul Millsap, but Paul Millsap played like 30 games this year, or maybe 40, and Kenneth Faried sucked. Like he actually sucked. He's completely just gone into the basement from being a really good manimal, and then and beyond that, like it was just Gary Harris was really good, and that was pretty much it for the team. So yeah, like he basically carried them to 46 wins, and it was a really impressive season for him. And just like Karl Anthony Towns, I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So yeah, I thought he deserved the All NBA second team in that regard.
Yeah. So my second team then, that concludes your second team, right?
Yeah.
And could you recap that? So you said you have Durant, Giannis,
Nikola Jokic, and then Damian Lillard and Chris Paul.
Damian Lillard, Chris Paul. Okay. So my second team, on my second team, I also have Kevin Durant as one of my forwards. I have Karl Anthony Towns as my center, as another forward. Then I have Joel Embiid as the center, and then the two guards that I have Russell Westbrook and I have Steph Curry and Victor Oladipo as my second team guards. So the reason for that is because I understand, like I said earlier, the reason that I couldn't give it to Steph Curry on the first team was because of his injury. But I mean, when you actually sit and when you watch Steph Curry and his gravitation, just in terms of how he plays and what his play style is and how basically what he does to defense is essentially like the biggest thing about Steph Curry. It's unlike any other player in the NBA, to where if I were to select, like I said, if I were to select 5 players to play on a basketball team to go decide the fate of the universe, I would pick Steph Curry, because even yesterday when he was having a horrible night shooting the ball, because of his ability to just automatically start hitting 3-pointers out of nowhere and his ability to shoot from such deep range, he gravitates at defense even when he's not shooting well. So he completely changes defenses regardless of how well he's playing, because you always have to guard him and you always have to be near him, and you can never rest on him, and you can't let him get loose. And there's just so many plays that are ran for him and that he excels at being a part of. So I have Steph Curry on my All NBA second team just because I feel like he contributes more to that team winning, and he's the reason that they're the best offense we've probably ever seen. But more to why I wouldn't give it to Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook, who I believe would be the next few choices. Chris Paul, while he did have a great season, an underrated season, offensively. I really, he didn't really play as well defensively as he has before. He was All NBA first team All Defense last year. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's a year older. He's playing in a new system. He was adapting. But I feel like without James Harden, he wouldn't have been able to have such a successful season. And like I said, I taken into account degree of difficulty. Their team was able to win 65 games despite him missing multiple games. So I think he was injured for a lot of the season. And I love Chris Paul to death, but at the end of the day, I think he averaged. His assist numbers were down. Obviously, that's a result of playing with James Harden. His numbers overall were down. But that's not to take away from him. I just couldn't give it to him over someone like Steph Curry, who is directly responsible for his team being one of the greatest offensive teams you've ever seen. So, and then Victor Oladipo is the second guard that I have on the team. The reason that I have him, because Steph Curry and Victor Oladipo are actually both the guards who made All NBA third team. The reason that I propped them up was because like I said, I think Steph Curry is just more valuable and a better, like he does what, he does in 5 minutes what it would take Russell Westbrook to do in 10 minutes. He's much more efficient and he basically contributes, while he doesn't rebound the ball and assist the ball as much, he does everything in such a more concise and better manner that you'd rather have him. And then Victor Oladipo I have because, first of all, his improvement was so crazy that, and like, me and you talked about it the other week when we were talking about the Indiana and Cleveland series, like Indiana is actually a fantastic team. They probably would have been able to win a series against any other team that didn't have LeBron James. Their defense was fantastic, and he specifically defensively was fantastic all year. He led the league in steals. He improved to being a 24-point per game scorer, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. He played really well all around. And another guard that some people might be wondering about is DeMar DeRozan. I personally think Victor Oladipo in one season has already become, arguably the best shooting guard in the Eastern Conference. So I think he's already better than DeMar DeRozan because he's a better shooter from distance already, and he provides you more. And DeMar DeRozan is an older player, and this is probably as good as he's ever going to be. And his peak is 23 points on, just like 30% 3-point shooting. So Victor Oladipo is a better shooter, better defender. And I just feel like I wanted to honor him and what he was able to do for this Pacers team and be the best player on a team that made the playoffs and could have made it to the second round, maybe even made it to the conference finals had the matchups worked out better. And just overall, I think Indiana, the Pacers in general, just sort of needed a reward for their phenomenal play this season and how well, Nate McMillan did coaching Victor Oladipo and obviously his improvement because last year he was like a 16-point per game scorer and people were like, oh, Westbrook is carrying this whole team and stuff. But, now he really showed that he really wasn't the problem with that whole Westbrook situation. And I think that I think it's fair for him to be on the All-NBA second team because Russell Westbrook, well, like I said earlier, he produces amazingly statistically, but at the end of the day, it's like he's directly responsible for the reason that they don't win more because, he just takes dumb shots at the end of games and he ends up costing them games because he'd rather shoot like a contested 3 at the end of a game instead of driving into the rim. And then, sometimes he'll just completely miss the backboard or miss the rim completely or stuff like that. He airballs a lot of threes. He's the worst volume 3-point shooter in the league. So I really just can't reward a player like that. Because when you have an opportunity to play with a player like Paul George, I really feel like that you have to make the most of it and you should win at least 50 games. And you can't have such up and down stretches like that as a team. So that's why I can't give it to Russell Westbrook. And I just think Victor Oladipo at this point is already better than DeMar DeRozan. So just to recap, my All-NBA second team is Steph Curry, Victor Oladipo, Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid, and Kevin Durant.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the biggest divergences there are you bringing down Russell Westbrook more, which I'm completely fine with. Just to be clear, I think that Russell Westbrook is one of the worst teammates in the NBA aside from John Wall, and yeah, with only
I hate John Wall's bad.
Yeah, he just ruined his idea of himself in my mind with that one playoff game that I watched of him just yelling at the refs the entire game. I really don't like him now, and that's a shame because I live kind of close to Washington, so the Wizards should be my home team. But yeah, sorry, John Wall, you kind of blew that for yourself. The other two discrepancies were Nikola Jokic versus Joel Embiid. Honestly, I think this one's pretty close to a toss-up, to be honest. I think Nikola Jokic, if you consider how underrated he was this year and just how actually otherworldly he is on offense. Like, he is probably, aside from LeBron James, I would say he's the best offensive player in the NBA. I think he's better than Giannis. I I don't think that's a stretch actually. I think that he's okay. Maybe he's pretty close to Giannis, but like it's pretty neck and neck between those two. But then, like I mean, it's those three at the top, just LeBron, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic, and they're all incredible at creating plays for their teammates, incredible at getting shots for themselves. They can all kind of shoot from free, not really Giannis, but he's the best driver in the league. Obviously, LeBron's incredible. Nikola Jokic, he can score from anywhere, and he can pass from anywhere. He's obviously really reliable for a good rebound if you need one, because he's playing the center position. And let me check how many rebounds he got this season. Yeah, 10.7 per game, so like that's super reliable. And his defense was even a little better this year. It wasn't good, let's be clear, but it was a little better. Probably close to what James Harden was doing on the Rockets. Not
Yeah.
really, but because James Harden actually was like league average defensively, but he was at least on par with Giannis, which is
Yeah, I mean, I think Jokic. The reason I neglected Jokic really wasn't. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that I thought he was bad or that he didn't perform. It's just I just think Embiid produces more on a two-way. Like you said, basically, Embiid is obviously a better defender, and I feel like he's able to contribute a little bit more just because he can play better on both ends,
yep.
whereas Jokic contributes more on one end. So
no, it was pretty close. I have no problem with that one. So yeah, and I don't really remember that or discrepancy, so I guess I'll just move on from that point. Okay. So for my third team, I actually included Stephen Curry, so it was close. Like he almost made the second team again for like the same thing with Damian Lillard on the second team versus the first team. So my first guard was Stephen Curry. He had an awesome season. There's always that debate about, can you let a guy who played 50, 55 games on the All-NBA team? And my argument is if he's good enough based on overall production, then what do you care? Like if he gets enough total win shares or gets enough FORP, I don't really care if he only played 55 games. That means that he was just as impressive as somebody who got the same amount in 82 games. So if even more impressive based on rate stats. So yeah, that's my argument for Stephen Curry. I think that not many people are going to argue about that. He's an incredible enough player that there's not really much of a debate for that. It's not like a Joel Embiid situation for Rookie of the Year last year. So that's my first guard. And then for my second guard, I had Kyle Lowry. Now, obviously, the Raptors had an incredible season last year, and as we discussed earlier, a lot of that can be chalked up to the bench mob, obviously, but also Kyle Lowry stepping up in a big time way in the regular season and just becoming a really good facilitator for the offense, actually passing the ball around instead of just running an ISO set. And I'm sure a lot of that had to do with Dwayne Casey coaching him to do that, but still, it takes a lot to execute on a completely different offensive scheme, and that's definitely to his credit, and I think it deserved All NBA team. So obviously, you can make a case for Victor Oladipo being here with his good defensive play, but Kyle Lowry is pretty good on defense himself, and
that is
I
true.
honestly I can't give you a good reason why Oladipo can't be here because I didn't watch any Pacers games this year, and I just don't know enough about Depot's game. But yeah, I think that I mean that's kind of all I got. I don't really have any good reason for not having Oladipo on the third team. So that's my second guard. Then for my first forward, I'm pretty proud of this one actually. I have Ben Simmons.
All
So
right.
I think a lot of people don't give Ben Simmons enough credit for just how good of a rookie he was, especially considering he had no free game at all. He was one of the best drivers in the league. He was one of the best defenders at the forward position, even if he was playing point guard most of the time. And he's one of the best passers in the league. And I don't think you need to do a lot more than that to be really good in the NBA. Essentially, he was Giannis, except a little worse on offense because he didn't have as much of a perimeter game. I know you didn't think I would say that anyone had a worse perimeter game than Giannis, but yeah, that's Ben Simmons for you. And he was better on defense, but I'm sure Giannis will rebound next year, so I'm not really going to hold that against him. So yeah, that's my first forward. So obviously that shows you, since you didn't see Donovan Mitchell above him, that's going to be my Rookie of the Year pick. For the second forward, I have LaMarcus Aldridge. So essentially the reason that the Spurs were able to stay in good playoff positioning, like I think they were in the third spot after like 55 games of the NBA season, which was incredible considering they were trotting out a bunch of players that never had playing time, and just Paul Gasol on his last legs, and just Patty Mills and Manu Ginobili, and just a whole bunch of people that should not be playing in the NBA anymore. Like they're really good, but they're also really old. So like that's really tough to win with, and I think LaMarcus Aldridge was the big reason why they were able to stay in the position that they did for so long. I think he had an incredible performance and turnaround from last year, where he was trying to get out of the situation with Popovich. Obviously, there's the not famous, but the iconic conversation between him and Popovich about him talking about wanting to have his role changed this season. And it seemed like that really helped him into having a much better season. He was really good around the rim again. He wasn't really the same player that he was in Portland, where like you would see him really good in the pick and roll. He was just kind of like a really prototypical power forward, and he just did a really good job. Gave him great production, and it was about all you could ask for. I forget how old he is actually. Let me check. Let's see, Lamarcus Aldridge. You got a guess for how old he is?
I think Lamarcus Aldridge is 32.
Yep, 32. Yeah. Okay, so he's actually younger than I thought. Okay, well, hopefully he can keep that up, because that it was a pretty impressive year for him. And yeah, good for him. And then for my center position, I have Andre Drummond, because I feel like he, again, was a really underrated player. And I don't know why the center positions all ended up being super underrated players, but yeah, I think that he was awesome defensively, just like he is every year. And he was actually really good offensively. At the beginning of the season, I read a bunch of articles about him improving his assist totals, because he's like one of the worst assisters in the league from the center position, aside from Hassan Whiteside. But he improved a lot for that, so that was important for him. He's obviously finishing around the rim. He's always done that. And another thing that he finally improved on was his free throw percentage, which was really nice to see for a player that got like 34% from the free throw line one year, setting the all-time worst record. And this year he was like 68% or something, which obviously still isn't good, but like it's certainly passable, and like you'll take it any year. And yeah, Andre Drummond, how about that? Getting his free throw percentage correct and basically doubling it, which is ridiculous. And I don't know if that led to him being having the Hack-a-Shack happen less. Obviously, that was taken out slightly by rule changes a couple years ago, but it still happens in late game situations. But yeah, I think it was really important that he improved as much as he did. And I'm actually checking. It was the 60.5% from free throws this year, but still, that's really good. And just in terms of what that did for his true shooting percentage, which takes into account his free throw percentage along with his free point percentage, like that exists. He had a 5.55%, so that's pretty good. Obviously not leading the league or anything like someone like Clint Capella, but that's pretty good for Andre Drummond, and good for 0.05, not 0.05, I guess that would be 5% increase off his previous season high, so that's pretty good. So yeah, I think that he deserved a nod here. You can make a case for Joel Embiid at this position, but as I said, I was pretty stringent on just following what the advanced metrics said and not really using any common sense. If I did, I probably would have given it to Joel Embiid over Andre Drummond here, but I think you can't complain too much about him being in this position. So just to recap, I had Stephen Curry, Kyle Lowry, Ben Simmons, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Andre Drummond for my All-NBA third team.
All right. So for my third team, there's a little bit of a theme here. It's kind of like, not for every player, but for three of them. It's sort of like, had they been able to play more, their teams would have been much better. So Chris Paul is my first guard because, I left him off my second team, in favor of Steph Curry for what I said about, just impact and drop off and stuff like that. But if Chris Paul was able to play all 82 games this year, there's no doubt in my mind the Rockets probably could have won maybe 68, 69, maybe even 70, 71 games. Because, he missed a lot of games. And, he was so good this year. Like, as we've talked about, he was so good next to James Harden. He really thrived in the whole staggering minutes thing with Mike D'Antoni. And, even what he was able to do when he did play was absolutely fantastic. His assist to turnover ratio was amazing again, just like it always is. Probably the best in the league. I'm not exactly sure on that, but I'm pretty sure it was up there. And then what he does as a rebounding guard, what he's able to do as a passer, and even as a scorer, he took a little bit of a drop off this year, but he's still 17 points per game, close to 8 assists, probably 4 or 5 rebounds. I'm not sure what he did in terms of steals this year, but regardless of what it was, I'm sure he played good enough defense to where he sustained their defense, and I'm sure it was worse without him than it was with him. So Chris Paul is my first guard for the All NBA third team. My second guard is Ben Simmons. You had him as a forward. I have him as a guard, just based on who I have for the rest of it. But
Yeah,
like
makes
you
sense.
said, his rookie season was completely amazing. I mean, he averaged 16, 7. I think he averaged 16 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He shot about 50% from the field, and he was probably the best point guard defender. Also because of his size, he's 7 feet tall. He's such a unique player. So, he was able to lead the Sixers to having 52 wins, I believe they had this year. So, all props to Ben Simmons. He played fantastic this year, and it just goes to show how valuable of a player he is because, the Sixers had Joel Embiid last year, but even in the 31 games he played, I think they were just above 500 in the 31 games he played. But with Ben Simmons and him together, he really unlocks the potential of that team. He gets their shooters wide open. He really thrived there this year, and he's only going to get better. And I won't be surprised if next year he actually makes an All-NBA team, which I really think he will. So my two guards are Chris Paul and Ben Simmons, and then my first forward I have LaMarcus Aldridge. For the reasons that you mentioned, he was the reason that the Spurs made the playoffs this year. He was able to keep them afloat. He did a fantastic job in the mid-range area and as a rebounder. I think he averaged 23 points and 8 rebounds, and he's been sustaining a high-level play for a couple of years now, and it was cool to see him have a bounce-back year like this. And simply because of the Spurs' success this year, winning 47 games without a top 3 player in the league, I think is fantastic. Obviously, Popovich gets some credit for that, but at the end of the day, you do need a star player you need at least one star to make the playoffs. There's not a single team, I think, in the playoffs that didn't have at least one star player, except maybe like the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
He did fantastic carrying the Spurs this year from an offensive standpoint, and I'm sure his defense was pretty good because the Spurs are always pretty good defensively, and they make bad defenders good defenders. So there's LaMarcus Aldridge for my first forward spot. For my second forward spot, I have Jimmy Butler. I think, and like I said, he kind of follows the same theme as Chris Paul, where if he had been able to play more games, I think the Timberwolves would have won more games. He really went down at a really inopportune time. I think he missed either 16 or 18 games at a really bad stretch. The Timberwolves they were the third seed in the West all year up until his injury, and then after the injury, they fell to 7, and they really got stuck in the whole. They got stuck in the whole mad Eastern or Western Conference race for spots 3 through 8. And I think, if he had been able to play, the Timberwolves probably would have won 51, 52, 53 games. They ended up, I think, winning 47. And there were some games where I obviously watch a lot of Timberwolves games, so
Yes.
I don't speak to it, but he, his impact was really missing in some plays because, you see Andrew Wiggins trying to replicate the stuff that Jimmy Butler does, and you just see that he's not even close to being as good of a defender. He's not as efficient as a scorer. So I have Jimmy Butler because he played fantastic when he did play, averaged, I think, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. I think maybe shot 46 or 47% from the field. He shot fine from the three-point line this year. I think he shot 35, maybe 36% from 3. And, he was a good free throw shooter, as he always is. And, I think if he had been able to play more games, because people would have maybe even considered him for All-NBA second team rather than making All-NBA third team. I have Jimmy Butler as my second forward because he would have been able to do a lot, I think, if he had been able to play the whole season healthy. And then for my center spot, I have someone that I'm actually surprised that you left off of your top 3 teams.
Ooh.
I have Rudy Gobert.
Oh, okay.
For the same reasons that I have Jimmy Butler and Chris Paul. Rudy Gobert missed, I think, 27 to 30 games. I'm not sure exactly how many this year.
You got screwed on that for me.
I mean, you can see the difference when Rudy Gobert plays. I'm sure, you could see it in the playoffs how important he was and what he's able to do to anchor the Utah's defense and stuff like that. So Rudy Gobert is a fantastic defensive player, and he really changed them as a team. I mean, I don't think the Jazz had a winning record before he came back, and then once he came back, that's when they were able to make the push to winning. However many games that they won this year, they played amazing with him, and I think that if he had been able to play more games, Utah probably would have won similar to the Timberwolves, 51, 52, 53 games, something like that. So basically, my All-NBA third team, just to recap, consists of Chris Paul, Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Rudy Gobert. And also for LaMarcus, just a note here, LaMarcus Aldridge could easily be replaced with Nikola Jokic. The only reason that I left Jokic off my top 3 teams was, like I said, because just defensively, I just don't think that he's there yet to a point where I can consider him. He's not yet a player where I would be like if I were to pick players to just go and save the fate of the universe, he wouldn't be one that I picked just because I feel like he could get blown by a little bit too much defensively. Offensively, he'd definitely be there. If all NBA teams were split into being like all offensive and all defensive, and if there was all NBA, all offensive, and all defensive, I would definitely have him on an all offensive NBA team. But it's just simply from a defensive perspective, that's the only thing holding me back from letting him be on a top 3 All NBA team. But you could replace him with LaMarcus Aldridge, and there wouldn't be that much of a drop off at all. I just think LaMarcus Aldridge sort of deserves something for his efforts this year. Willing his team to the playoffs and doing his best to play the Warriors. So Chris Paul, Ben Simmons, LaMarcus Aldridge, Jimmy Butler, and Rudy Gobert. It's my All NBA 13.
Okay, then I suppose we're even at the center position with me bumping Karl Anthony Towns up to the first team over your second team, and then you bumping Rudy Gobert onto your third team. I would have liked to, but honestly, my problem with it was first of all, the advanced metrics said he wasn't, but with me trying to rationalize the fact that he's not here, I would guess it's because the Jazz, obviously, they were a much better defensive team when Rudy Gobert was there, but they were already a pretty good defensive team, so you could say there wasn't that big of an increase. Obviously, he's a big offensive force, so I wonder where that came from, but yeah, I think that Andre Drummond, if he was on in the Jazz, I think he would have been pretty good defensively as well, and about the same offensively. I mean, Rudy Gobert's good on offense, don't get me wrong, but so is Andre Drummond, and yeah, Gobert's probably the best defensive player in the league outside of Draymond Green, but yeah, it's a tough sell between them, and I'd be curious to see actually dig into the advanced metrics more and look at all the formulas and compare it to box score stats and see where things go wrong and things go right and see why the specific players had the positions that they do, because I think that's just a really interesting thing to me. But yeah, there's been a couple cases now where that could create a much more interesting situation. The one thing I was surprised with was I thought for sure Russell Westbrook was going to be on your third All NBA team, and I get that you don't like his performance with teammates, but to average a triple double in a season and not make any of the All NBA teams, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I agree, it is weird. I am a little harsher on Westbrook than I would be on most players, just because it's something about watching Russell Westbrook sort of just makes me upset because he's so talented and he's probably the one I think there's a case for him being the most athletic player that's ever played in the NBA. But despite that, he doesn't give enough effort defensively, and he's still such an inefficient scorer. I know he shot 45% from the field this year, but I think that was his career high.
Yeah.
He's just inefficient, and I just feel like he's sort of more of a detriment. And I feel like he also kind of, I think it's pretty well known at this point that he kind of does stat pad a little bit in terms of how he gets his rebounds. He kind of waits for his teammates to box out for him, and then he goes up and grabs it so he can push it all the way. I get it that some people can argue that that's sort of a tactic that he does in order to push the pace of his team and sort of make them more of a third in transition if he grabs the rebound and takes it 94 feet instead of having an outlet from a big man. But regardless, he was close. You could have taken him off. You could have taken either one of Ben Simmons or Chris Paul off and put on Russell Westbrook if you really wanted to. But I prefer to give it to both of them because I just feel like they're both better winners. Ben Simmons, in my eyes, is already he's a better winner and a better player than Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, because he can actually. He averaged 16, 8, and 8 as a rookie, and Russell Westbrook averaged 25, 10, and 10. So it's really it's whatever. And also the thing with Russell Westbrook is it's also pretty clear that he that he went on a vendetta to average a second triple double because he needed 16 rebounds in his last game of the season in order to average the triple double, and then obviously he went out of his way to grab 20 against the Grizzlies in a meaningless game that he didn't need to play because it wouldn't have changed who they played in the first round. So, I really just can't give Russell Westbrook love like that because he's just kind of, he really is more of an individual player than a team player. And when it's a team sport, I can't really reward that. So that's really the main reason I left him off. But he did average a triple-double, and not to take away from his greatness, he's going to be remembered as one of the best players of this era, simply because of his production. But as a winner, I just feel like he shouldn't be overrated. So that's why I left him off. But I don't have any gripe against him being on an All NBA team. He just wouldn't have made mine.
Yeah, no, I get that. Did you end up doing a runner-up team?
Yes, actually.
Okay, good. And then I guess we can talk about that too. Then then we can go through the comparisons to the midseason and actual NBA team. So for my fourth team, I really, and just for anyone curious, I'll probably read off all the teams that I did. I ended up doing 8. So I don't know why, but yeah, I did 8 teams. So I'll just end up reading 5 for 8 after that, not really discussing any of them unless there's something that piques your interest. But yeah, for my fourth team, I wanted to give it to people that just were runners up and that like I felt were almost not cheated, but like they deserved to be on an All NBA team and they just barely missed it because they either lost a really close one or yeah, that's essentially why they all missed him. So yeah, for my first guard, I had Kyrie Irving. So we talked about a lot how Kyrie Irving's super overrated, but he's still a really good player, and I felt like he deserved the slot over my number 2 guard, Victor Oladipo, who, yeah, I mean, he had to come up at some point. Let's be real. He did have an awesome season, and I doubt that he actually should have been below Kyrie Irving, as in like guard 1, guard 2, but luckily it doesn't matter in terms of all NBA teams, so I won't focus on that too much. But yeah, it's interesting that that happened that way. For my first forward, I had Jimmy Butler, because as you said, he had an awesome season. Just my problem not getting him onto the first 3 teams was he wasn't Stephen Curry in his and about the same playing time, so it was just harder to justify him making it over someone like Ben Simmons or Marcus Aldridge. But yeah, he was pretty close. And then my second forward, I was really proud to get him on there. It was, again, following the trend of underrated centers and forwards. Well, no, just centers. It was Al Horford. So we've talked about so many times how Al Horford has had an amazing season and how he is incredibly underrated, a better player than Kyrie Irving. So I took a lot of pride in putting him on the same All-NBA team as Kyrie. But yeah, he had a really good season, was essentially the best pick-and-roll player in the NBA this season. He's an amazing passer from the center position, and this is for someone who, coming into the season, expressed great concerns about playing the center and was always thought of himself as a power forward. And you know what? He looked great as a center, and he played great as a center. And he anchored an awesome Boston defense that nobody saw coming. Everyone thought that, okay, they'll probably be about league average, but no, they were one of the best defensive teams in the league, and that was incredible. And it mainly came from him. It certainly wasn't coming from Kyrie. So yeah, like he just had a really good season, and he had a great free point percentage too. I forget what he actually got here. Let me see what he actually got for. I know at one point he was at like 40%, which is incredible, especially compared to someone like Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons. But let's see what he actually finished at. Oh, yeah, wow. Okay, he finished at 43% as a center. Yeah.
Sure.
Wow.
I mean, he isn't thinking a high volume, but he converts.
Yeah, I mean, he's shooting 3.1 per game, so like that's.
Oh yeah, that actually. I mean, wow. I mean, I actually didn't know that. LeBron shoots 5 for perspective.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Oh wow, that's actually down from what he did last year. He did 3.6 last year. Okay, but even still, that's really incredible that he improved from a 35% 3-point shooter to a 43. So, yeah, that's really good. I think that more than deserves a second forward nod. And then for my center, I honestly kind of ran out of centers, to be honest. I have so many centers on my list. So I went with Steven Adams. I'm not really sure why he is ranked here, to be honest. I would have given it to Gobert in a heartbeat over him, but I said I would stick with the advanced metrics, so I did. I'm not really sure why he's here. I guess he was a good defensive player, but I mean,
yeah, I think it's because I think he does he doesn't really block shots, but I think it's because the team's defensive rating is better because he kind of cleans up, like he rotates well. So I think his advanced metrics defensively are what boost him up. And also, I mean, he contributes sometimes offensively off of pick and rolls. So I think it's mainly because Russell Westbrook, he's Russell Westbrook's best companion. And since Russell Westbrook plays a majority of their minutes, I think, when Steven Adams is on the floor, that's when their best stuff happens. So I think that's why he probably has good advanced metrics.
Yeah, and just to his credit, he averages 9 rebounds despite Russell Westbrook stealing all of his. So
this is another thing about him actually that I forgot to mention. He averages 9 rebounds, but he averages his split.
Yeah,
is actually,
yeah, the offensive rebounds. Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, he averages like 5 offensive rebounds or something like that.
Yep, 5.1 to 4. So, which is incredible because most guys they average way more defensive rebounds. But that shows you again that Russell Westbrook is clearly stealing easy defensive rebounds.
Yeah, he probably could average like 12 or 13 if Westbrook wasn't there, but that's another thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna check right now what Russell Westbrook's offensive versus defensive rebound split is. Yep, yeah, exactly what we said. Yeah, he averaged 1.9 offensive rebounds and 8.2 defensive rebounds. So there you go. Okay.
So you said you have Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, I can recap. So I had Kyrie Irving, Victor Oladipo, Jimmy Butler, Al Horford, and Steven Adams.
All right, so my All-NBA fourth team, I guess it would be, is it's pretty similar. So I have Kyrie Irving for the reasons that you mentioned. He kind of got robbed of the fact that he was injured, and because there was a lot of good guard play this year. But if you really look at the All-NBA teams, like the official ones, Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler both made All-NBA third team when their team won 47 games, but Kyrie Irving and Al Horford, neither of them made one despite their team winning 55 games. And obviously a lot of that has to do with Brad Stevens and stuff, but you still can't discount the players in my opinion. So Kyrie Irving is my first guard for my All-NBA fourth team. Like you said, he was just kind of snubbed by the fact that he was injured and he didn't play that many games, but he played phenomenally. He's a great player. He's a very unique player, the best finisher at the rim in my opinion, best ball handler, all that stuff. So Kyrie Irving, fourth team guard, first guard. My second guard is Russell Westbrook.
Yay!
So obviously, same with you and Victor Oladipo, he needed to get mentioned at some point. Despite what I think of him, he still did average 25 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. And if it was easy to do that, then more players would do it. So I can't continue to hate on him forever. Despite the fact that he is inefficient, he did make improvements. So, he deserves something for that. I think he shot 45.7% from the field. I'm not exactly sure, but, you rounded up that 46%, which is basically as high as Kobe Bryant ever shot in his career, but he's also overrated. We'll get to that at another point. But so Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook are my first two guards. My first forward, I have Al Horford, basically for all the reasons you mentioned. I think he's really the reason that the Celtics were able to be so successful with all their young players. They had, a savvy veteran kind of holding everything in for them in the middle. He did a fantastic job. So I have him as a forward there. I have Nikola Jokic as another forward, like you mentioned. He's amazing offensively to the point where he's a top 5 offensive player in the league, just in terms of he's able to make passes that nobody else is able to make. I think by the end of his career, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that he could end up as probably the best passing big man of all time.
Yeah,
I think he had 6 assists this season, and you really never know. He's capable of averaging a triple double if he just plays with talent that's more capable of making shots and converting on his passing attempts. But I'm sure his passing or his assist percentage is amazing. I don't have the number in front of me, but
I'll check.
So, Jokic is my fourth player, second forward. And then as a center, similarly to the reasons that you have Steven Adams, I have Clint Capella. He improved a lot this year, and he played fantastic alongside Chris Paul and James Harden, and he was sort of the third piece of their big three, as I guess you would say. And I think the Rockets had a tremendous record when he played. When Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul all played, there was a point where they were like 41-3 in the regular season or something like that. So obviously he contributed in a big way. He was sort of their defensive force, and he was sort of like the one player that thrived off of the whole D'Antoni system. But even though he thrived off of it, he didn't really waver from who he was as a player. He still brought a lot of energy, and he was even able to play a little bit better offensively by catching some lobs, rolling at the right times. And, he really held it down for them defensively, and was the reason that they were able to be a top 10 defense in the league this year. So Clint Capella, Nikola Jokic, Al Horford, Kyrie Irving, and Russell Westbrook would be my All-NBA fourth team. But I only did one runner-up team, so I guess at this point you can let the audience know about your remaining 3 teams, I guess it would be.
Yeah, 3.5 really, but I'm glad we did that one runner-up team, though, because it seemed like it cleaned up some of the discrepancies that we had, so that's nice. And just to give a comparison for Nikola Jokic's assist percentage of 29.6% this year, Stephen Curry's was 30.3%. So, obviously that was down from his peak assist percentage of 39.9% in actually 2013-14, which, wow, that's actually incredible. That wasn't even an MVP year. Wow, okay, that was a Mark Jackson here too. That's pretty incredible. But
I think he averaged close to 9 assists. I think 1 year. I think it was 8.6 or something, 8.7.
Yeah, I'll check.
I think it's 2014.
2013-14. Yeah, 8.5 assists. So I didn't know that. Wow, that's actually really cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
he could pass. He could probably average double-digit assists if he didn't split ball handling duties with Draymond Green. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's just another. I actually think I really like Steph Curry as a player. I don't like who he plays for, and the sort of the whole thing that they created. But he individually is an amazing player. I have no issue with anyone who thinks that he's even the second best player in the league just because of what he does offensively.
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
So
So just to wrap this up with, well, not wrap it up, because and then we're going to go into midseason and the actual, but to wrap up mine at least, just stop me if you hear anything interesting or want to get some clarification or something for my All-NBA fifth team. I had Kemba Walker and then DeMar DeRozan. I was pretty happy that I got Kemba Walker in over DeMar. I think DeMar was super overrated this year, as you agree with. Then for my first forward, I had Otto Porter, which I was happy with because he kept up the amazing stuff he did last year, really earned that contract extension. Then my second forward, I had Paul George. So, yay, I got Otto Porter above him. And yeah, as we said, Paul George is overrated as well. And then for my center, I had Clint Capella. So, yeah. Then for my sixth team, I had Drew Holiday because he was amazing on defense and he was pretty good on offense as well. Really is starting to build on his potential. Then I had Darren Collison, the league-leading three-point shooter. Then after that, I had Joe Ingles. So yeah, not too far down the apple tree there. After that, I had Derek Favors, aka Rudy Gobert's replacement. And then at center, I had Rudy Gobert finally. So that's a relief. Then for the seventh team, I had Bradley Beal, and I couldn't find another guard to put as the second one, so I just skipped that. Then for my first forward, I had Kyle Anderson, who had an amazing year in Orlando. Pretty much the only person to have an amazing year there, but I guess somebody had to. Then for my second guard, I had Enes Kanter, who was pretty good with the Knicks. And at center, I had DeAndre Jordan. And then for the eighth team, I just did forwards because I couldn't think of anyone else. And I just had Draymond Green and Robert Covington.
yeah.
Okay. So to compare that to our mid-season projections, or at the very least mine, if you don't have yours available, Stephen Curry fell big time, as you would expect, from first team to third team, since he didn't play half the second half of the season. You would absolutely expect that. Giannis fell down a team, at least for me. For second team, Russell Westbrook rose to the first team to replace Stephen Curry, and then Karl Anthony Towns rose to the first team as well. On the third team, Tyreek Evans unfortunately fell off the map. That was a real shame. I was super proud of that pick. Enes Kanter also fell off the map, as you would expect. Kyle Lowry stayed where he was. Jimmy Butler fell a little bit because he obviously got injured as well right after the All-Star break when I made this. Then on the fourth team, Paul George fell even further. Damian Lillard skyrocketed. Kyrie Irving stayed right where he was. Nikola Jokic went up a bit. Victor Oladipo went up from the fifth team to the fourth team. Clint Capella stayed where he was, same with DeMar DeRozan. And then Kemba Walker rose to the fifth team, and Al Horford rose all the way up to the fourth team. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So for my midseason projections, I had initially for my midseason projection for the first team, I had James Harden, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. For me, Kevin Durant fell to the second team, and Giannis replaced him on the first team. Then Steph Curry for me fell to the second team instead of being on first like I expected. Damian Lillard, I actually didn't have on any All-NBA teams at all for my midseason projection. He skyrocketed all the way to first because, I mean, he really took over in the second half of the season. That's kind of where he made his splash after the All-Star break. And then I had Russell Westbrook on the second team. For me, he fell to fourth team. I already said Kevin Durant fell to the second team from the first team. I had DeMar DeRozan on the second team then, and he fell for me out of my teams. I also had Embiid stayed the same. I had him on my second team. Oh no, that's wrong. I had Karl Anthony Towns on my second team. He was replaced with Joel Embiid on my second team. And then I had that flip, so I had Karl Anthony Towns stayed on my third team. Jimmy Butler stayed on the third team. Oladipo for me rose from being on the third team to the second team, and then that's all the switches that I had.
Okay. So
Chris Paul, I think, also was on my third team.
Yeah.
No. Ben Simmons also. Ben Simmons kind of came out of nowhere. He really wasn't on my radar when I made my midseason projections.
Okay. and I think that the correlation between the midseason projections and the final ones really corroborates something that stat that we've talked about often, where any given NBA season by like I forget if it's like 20 games in or 40 games in or the All-Star break, but you can expect that 15 of the 16 teams that are in playoff position at that point will be in playoff position at season end. Maybe it was 13 out of 16, but regardless, the point was that you know a lot about the NBA very early on, so obviously you would know a lot about the players, and you wouldn't have too much change.
And another note, I think that people might have forgotten about. DeMarcus Cousins was on my radar to make an All NBA team around the midseason projection, but then obviously he got injured in January.
Yeah.
So in late January he was hurt, so he obviously fell from all the mids. He fell like he basically he was erased from the earth basically after he was injured. So. But around January, he would have been on my radar to make probably an All NBA team. I probably would have had him making like third team or fourth team, but his injury obviously prevented that from happening. So.
Yep, tripped and hurt his Achilles.
Kristaps Porzingis as well was a victim of that.
Oh yeah.
So
and that was,
he was playing really well before he was hurt. So.
Oh, fantastic! And that was part of the reason why I had so many underrated players on my All NBA teams this year was we had so many stars that it just weren't on last year. Like Kawhi Leonard, who made the team last year, he wasn't there. Who I'm just looking at the team last year to see players that just were gone. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas was completely gone, but he was kind of a one-year wonder. DeAndre Jordan took a step back. John Wall took a step back. DeMar DeRozan took a step back, despite his team taking 3 steps forward. So, and that'll open up a lot of guard positions. So yeah, that kind of explains it. Not really my underrated centers, but as I said, I don't really know why I had so many underrated centers. And then just to compare this to the actual All NBA teams, to read them off for anyone that's not aware, they had Dame. I guess I'll just choose which ones are guard 1 and guard 2 to give them some credit. They had James Harden, then Damian Lillard, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Anthony Davis. So just to compare that to ours, they brought up Kevin Durant. They kept Anthony Davis about where we usually do. Same with James Harden. Damian Lillard was about where we had him, and more or less. And I'm trying to think of. So I thought it was interesting that neither of us had a single Warrior on our All NBA first team, and since they're going to win the NBA Finals, that would be the first time that since the 2004 Detroit Pistons that something like that happened. Obviously, in actuality, Kevin Durant is on it, but it's still interesting to see that not a single.
Didn't that happen last year?
Oh, did it? I stand corrected. You're right. My bad.
I think Durant and Curry both made second team last year.
Yep, they did. Okay.
Because last year was weird though, because I think last year was also like I think the first team was what it was LeBron
and Kevin Durant was supposed to be on the first team. He just got screwed because he.
Okay, yeah, because he was hurt. Yeah, you're right. He missed like 28 last year.
Oh, not even that. Just everyone was so mad at him about going to the Warriors.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So that last year was kind of BS, but whatever. So on the second team, they had LaMarcus Aldridge on the second team. That's a little weird, to be honest. I guess I should just read them off first, actually. They had Russell Westbrook, DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, Giannis, and then Joel Embiid. So obviously they took your stance on Joel Embiid. Not a bad choice for them. Giannis about where he should be. Aldridge a little high. DeMar DeRozan way too high. That was not good by them overrating DeMar DeRozan over Kyle Lowry. That should not have been something that happened. And yeah, they kind of took the same stance that I did on Russell Westbrook. And then just to go into the All-NBA third team, they had Victor Oladipo, Stephen Curry, Karl Anthony Towns, Paul George, and Jimmy Butler. So they brought Jimmy Butler up a bit. They brought Paul George up way too much. That should not have happened. But as we've talked about, if you have an overrated player, he's going to be overrated. Karl Anthony Towns, a little below what the advanced metrics say, but based on traditional statistics, right where he should be. Oladipo getting a nod, and then Stephen Curry, which is good because they always have a problem with players not playing enough games, so it's good to see a guy playing 50, 55 games actually make an All-NBA team.
Yeah.
And just in terms of historical magnitude of some of the stuff, LeBron James finally got the most All-NBA first-team selections ever, so that's amazing. If he gets one more selection of any kind, he's going to break Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record right now for for at least my All NBA score. So that'll be really cool if he can do that. In that respect, he would be the best player of all time after that happens in my book. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see that. Kevin Durant got his eighth. That's pretty cool. And any other notable ones? Joel, I guess I'll just go through who were the first timers: Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Townsend, Victor Oladipo. So that's always cool. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the historical significance there. Surprisingly, Russell Westbrook has actually seven All NBA nods. That's a lot. I don't really know how he got that many early on in his career, but I guess there wasn't that much guard competition early on, especially in years where Goran Dragic was making the All NBA teams. So yeah, okay. So that's the All NBA teams, I guess. Great. All right. So do you want to do all defensive teams or All NBA rookie teams next?
Let's see. I guess we can go ahead and do all defense.
Okay.
Because I think rookies would be a little bit more compelling.
Great. Okay. So how should we do this? Well, I guess I'll start by pulling up the all defensive team list, but just in terms of my methodology, I did pretty much the same thing. My two statistics this time were defensive win shares and defensive box score plus minus. I thought that was all I really needed. I didn't really need defensive VORP or something because, first of all, that doesn't exist. But yeah, so that's what I did. I just averaged the Z-scores again. I think Z-score is helpful in that respect because if you have a player that just dominates on one statistic, they should get more credit than just having like 5.7 win shares versus 5. You should get like a huge boost in terms of Z-score because you did something really impressive, not just something that was 0.5 impressive. So yeah, that was how I came down on that. How did you evaluate defense?
So I based a lot of it on basically literally just what I watched because I watched a lot of NBA games and again similarly to how I looked at the All NBA teams, I looked at all the players who received votes and then I went and I looked at I actually didn't really look at anything but just basically a general idea of all the teams who I knew were good defensively. Like I knew Indiana was good defensively, Golden State, Boston, San Antonio, Minnesota, whatever it was. So. Not Minnesota, excuse me, Philadelphia. I took a look at all of that, and then I evaluated basically who I knew was sort of the team's defensive MVP, and overall just similarly to how I looked at the All NBA. Like if I needed to pick a team, basically just to completely shut down an opposing team, who would I pick? But I did it. I did it positionless because we talked about how positions actually aren't really factored into the defensive thing. It's just sort of ends up working out that way. So I actually I did my All NBA defensive teams positionless.
As I did.
So yeah, I sort of did. I kind of did eye test mixed with just who I knew contributed. Because like obviously there's some players on the two teams that were given that probably shouldn't have been there. Like just the discrepancies because of like I feel like there were definitely some players on the second team who should have been on the first team, but we'll talk about that in a second. So.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I can start with my team. So just to be clear, defensive metrics in any sport are always the most not controversial, but they're always lagging way more than offensive statistics. I don't really understand why that is. I think it has to do with box score statistics in a lot of ways, but it seems weird that we still don't have really reliable defensive metrics, and a player like Russell Westbrook is still evaluated as one of the best defensive players in the league when he is just not. But yeah, that's just my disclaimer in case I have any controversial selections here. I think I only have, just looking through it now, I have like one controversial selection, so it's not that big of a problem, but just wanted to point it out. So, because obviously I wasn't going to step in the way of math and tell it was wrong, when I probably should have, to be honest, but whatever. So for my all-defensive first team, I had Andre Drummond at the top. I think that you can make a good case that he was the best defensive player in the league this year. If Rudy Gobert played all 82 games, I think he pretty easily would have been the best, but unfortunately he didn't play all 82 games. He played like 50-something, so, or even less maybe. So yeah, that was kind of how that was decided. For my number 2, I had Ben Simmons, because he's amazing on defense. He's one of the best forwards in the league, and yeah, there's not too much to say there. He's awesome at locking people down. For my third, I had Anthony Davis because he was amazing when he was just roaming across. He was amazing in two roles, actually. When he was with DeMarcus Cousins, he had the role of roaming around the court and locking down any player that he could, usually a bigger one because, he's a bigger guy. But he could guard point guards if he had to. And yeah, that he did amazing in roaming around kind of the Draymond Green role. And he did amazing when DeMarcus Cousins was down and he just had to camp in the center and just lock down the paint. He was awesome at that, so he was great at the two things that any really big man has to do on defense. So I don't see how you can't give him the nod there. For my fourth player, I had Rudy Gobert, justifying the fact that he is amazing on defense and he can play 56 games and still rack up the same overall performance as all these other guys. So that's really cool, and it's also nice because landing anywhere on the first team is pretty much the same as landing first. So yeah, that's pretty good for him. And then, unfortunately, for my fifth one, I had Russell Westbrook. I'm not proud of it. I don't agree. I don't agree with it.
That's weird, actually.
I don't get it. Like the only two things he does well on defense is he gets steals and he gets blocks. That's it.
You know, I think the reason for it is because I think he plays so much like he played so many minutes alongside Paul George and Andre Roberson, who are so good defensively as a tandem. I think he benefited in terms of his defensive rating because not that many points were being scored on him when he was on the court. That probably inflated his individual defensive, statistics, advanced statistics and stuff.
Yeah, just looking at it right now. So just to give you an idea of how some defensive statistics work, usually it's box plus minus that takes into account your like on versus off court performance. It basically just looks at how was the defense when you were on the court, how was the defense when you were off the court, and does a little adjustment based on the strength of the team. But so Russell Westbrook, in terms of the league overall, he was 23rd in box plus minus, and then actually in defensive win shares, he was fourth. So yeah, I think it had a lot more to do with the steals and blocks, but still, to get 23rd in box plus minus, you're clearly getting the great on-off court splits that you were talking about. And that's always a weird thing because it says box score. You would think that it had to do with the box score, but as in like the box score statistics, but no, it actually just has to do with the points, which makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, I see. Like I think the advanced metrics are always a little bit weird because they sort of account for just like when the player is on the floor, it doesn't really account for who's on the floor with them because I think like Kyrie Irving for a majority of the time he was playing, he was 12th, I think, in individual defensive win shares, which really just doesn't make any sense because obviously we know he's not a good defender, but he was on the court with such other good defenders like Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, whatever. So it ended up boosting him individually defensively. So, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying by having Westbrook on there. It's a little bit weird. I actually never would have imagined that he would be so high in those. He's really not even someone that was on my radar. He actually didn't receive a single.
No, and nor should he have. But
he did. I don't think. Oh no, he did. He received 7 votes actually. So.
Oh really? Huh.
So yeah.
Must have been his fun teammates.
So for my All NBA defensive first team, it's going to be quite a big team. So I have Rudy Gobert for all the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, 56 games and still played outstanding defense and did just as much as anybody else did defensively throughout the year. Led the league in blocks. I'm not sure if he led the league in blocks this year.
It might have been Porzingis.
Oh no, I think Porzingis might have been eliminated for he didn't play enough. Yeah, I think it was Anthony Davis actually.
Oh okay.
But regardless, whatever. So Rudy, he was probably like second or third or whatever. So Rudy Gobert is first. I mean, he's the reason that they were the team that they were. He's the only reason that they were able to be as good as they were. He's the only reason they were able to beat a 5th seed and make it to the second round of the playoffs. He's the whole reason Russell Westbrook was basically useless in that first round against Utah. He's capable of limiting players like nobody else. He basically completely mitigates slashers. I mean, I think probably the only 2 players that he would really have trouble defending at the rim would probably be LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. But other than that, there's no exception to that. He's phenomenal. Not much to say about why he's on All NBA first team All Defense. So Rudy Gobert, and then I have Anthony Davis, led the league in blocks, is able to play multiple different roles. He can be a rover, help defender. He can even stick with some guards because he's pretty agile. He doesn't struggle too much defending the perimeter. He's not someone that you ever see get blown by or struggle. And even when he does get blown by or lose on a play, he usually gets back and contests the shot from behind or alters the shot in some way by either committing a smart foul or whatever it is. You also see him stepping up to take charges at the right times from time to time, which I think is an underrated part of defense. He knows when to take the foul, when to do certain things. He makes sure to stay outside of the restricted area, all that good stuff. So Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis. Then I have Ben Simmons for the same reasons that you mentioned. He's probably, like I said earlier, probably the best point guard defender just because of his size. He was able to do such amazing things defensively. I don't think people talk about it nearly as much as they should. Then I'm not sure if this pick would be considered controversial, but I have Joel Embiid because
Okay.
he took a step back in terms of the number of shots he blocked, but obviously that has to do with the fact that he played more games this season, so it's going to be spread out more. But there was just every time I think about Joel Embiid, I think back to this one. I'll send it to you after the podcast. Actually, it's a play where he switches from like he guards like four different people in one play, and he basically completely takes over the play defensively to the point where it's like you couldn't score on him. So and I watched a lot of Sixers games because they were extremely intriguing this year, and he was the anchor of them being the defense that they were this year. They played fantastic, and obviously he was helped by Ben Simmons, and I just feel like Philadelphia should be rewarded for their amazing defense this year by having two players on the first team all defense.
Yeah, and you guys should be able to see that play in the description right now. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and also like on the actual all defensive teams, Robert Covington made first team, who's also on Philadelphia, and Joel Embiid made second team, who's also on Philadelphia. But so basically, I'm just moving both to first team and then switching Robert Covington with Joel Embiid because I feel like I actually don't know too much about Robert Covington's defense. So I mean, I'm not able to say whether or not he should be on all first team all defense. So I've got Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, and then for my fifth slot, I have Draymond Green. I think it goes without saying that he's one of the best defenders in the league. He's amazing on the help side. He's the reason that Kevin Durant is all of a sudden being viewed as some amazing two-way player. And he's always there to make the right play, right block, right steal. He led the league in steals last year, Defensive Player of the Year last year. I wouldn't necessarily say that he dropped off this year. I just feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that they didn't win as many games, so it wasn't emphasized as much how good of a defender he was this year. But individually, like I said, like if I were to take players and just needed defenders to come, shut another team down, Draymond Green would definitely be one of the players. And also, his wingspan that we talk about all the time, and just his reach, and the fact that he's basically able to cover so much, and he's able to guard a variety of different players because of his, the fact that he's not too tall, but his wingspan makes up for the fact that he's not tall. So he's like 6'8" or 6'7" or whatever he is, but his wingspan is crazy enough to the point where he can defend anybody. So yeah, so that fills out my first team. I have Draymond Green, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, and Rudy Gobert. So yeah, that's my first team.
Yeah, and thank God you didn't have Russell Westbrook. Yeah, just to remind people, wingspan of 7 feet. So yeah, same as Kevin Durant, same as Klay Thompson, who we haven't mentioned yet, but yeah, he has an insane wingspan as well.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense for why he's as good defensively as he is then. But yeah, pretty much the same thing across the board for us. I'm curious to see if Andre Drummond makes your second team, but yeah, no real surprises there. Okay, and for my All-NBA second defensive team, I had, for my first one, Kyle Anderson. He is an amazing defender. He often gets underrated because he is either on the Spurs, who get very little publicity for not talking to the media, or now he's on the Magic, who I don't even know if they have a beat reporter, to be honest. They have such little press around them. But yeah, he's an amazing defender. Not as good offensively, but he always has room to improve there. And yeah, he's just really good defensively, and I imagine he's really fun to watch as well. I don't know what he looks like, to be honest, so I'm going to watch a highlight video of him after this. But yeah, I imagine he plays a lot like Klay Thompson for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why I think that, but yeah, he seems like the kind of player that would. Then I have Robert Covington after that. He's a really, really good defender. He definitely came through in the Sixers games that I watched this season. He just locks down on people, and he's not so much in the rim protector type. He's more of the roving big man, and he is really good at it. I would say the big difference between him and Anthony Davis, honestly, is Anthony Davis can be the guy who locks himself down in the paint, and Robert Covington just isn't that. But when he's roving around, he's probably alongside Anthony Davis, is one of the best at just doing that in the league. He's really good at it. And yeah, I give him a lot of credit for the 76ers defensive performances here alongside Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, obviously. But yeah, I thought he was a little better than Joel Embiid in terms of defense. Maybe it just had to do with him not having to carry such an offensive load. But yeah, he's really good. After that, I had Clint Capella, who was obviously the defensive anchor for the Rockets this season. Everyone always talks about the Rockets on their perimeter and having amazing perimeter defenders, and Al Faruqi and who else? PJ Tucker, Chris Paul, James Harden having an okay season because he's surrounded by great defenders. So yeah, like Clint Capella really held down the paint for them, which was important because they don't have that good defensive big men. So yeah, I think he played a really important role on their team. He did a good job at it. Was third in the league in blocks, so actually second in the league in blocks. Obviously, the huge drop off between him and Anthony Davis, but still, he was really good at what his job was, which was to stand in the paint, get a bunch of dunks, get a couple layups occasionally, and get some blocks. And yeah, kind of like a Steven Adams role, and he did a good job. After that, I had Yusuf Nurkic, that defensive anchor for the Portland Trailblazers. So we talked about in our Trailblazers recaps when we were doing the playoff series against the Pelicans. And yeah, their defense comes from their big men, from Ed Davis, from crap, I forget their other guy. I'll look that up in a second. But from Yusuf Nurkic as well. Like they just, it all comes from them. It comes from doing really good positioning and just being ready to jump on the ball whenever someone is like a good player gets a good position, and like they do a ton of double teams and switching and just just keeping players out of good advantageous spots. They were one of the best teams in terms of free point percentage allowed from the corner frees, which is super important. If you can limit that, you're going to be a good defensive team. Obviously, it all fell apart in the finals, but whatever. They were still pretty good. And dang it, I thought I screwed this up. Yeah, Al Faruqi is on the Trailblazers. I always mess that up. Who's the guy on the Rockets that sounds like Al Faruqi?
Luke and Bahamute.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I always mix them up for no good reason. Yeah. Okay. Well, Bahamute is also an amazing defender, but yeah, I mean, it all just comes from the center position for the Trailblazers, and leading the league in defense with C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard on your team is really impressive. So it speaks really highly to Yusuf Nurkic, and I also respect the fact that he gets punched in the face so often and still goes out there every day. So yeah, that was my fourth player. And then after that, I had Al Horford rounding them all out. I mean, there's not too much to say here that we haven't already said. Awesome defender. He really anchored the Celtics. He's the big reason that they were as good as they were defensively, alongside Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart, I believe, was pretty good. Jaylen Brown, great defender. So yeah, like it really just came from their big men as well. Not quite as big as the Trailblazers, but still very good. Al Horford, very good. And I mean, he's not so much one of the roaming defenders. He's more so rim protection, but still, he's awesome. It really depends on what position he's playing, honestly. If he's playing out there with Daniel Feast or Aaron Baines, he'll be more of a roaming guy. And if he's playing a true center position, he'll stay around the rim. But either way, he was a great defender. So yeah, that's my all-defensive second team. Kyle Anderson, Robert Covington, Clint Capella, Yusuf Nurkic, and Al Horford. And thank God I didn't have any other weird guys on here.
Yeah. So, so could you recap your team real quick?
Yeah. So I had Kyle Anderson, Robert Covington, Capella, Yusuf Nurkic, and Al Horford.
All right. So some similarities, some differences between our teams. So I actually also have Kyle Anderson on my All-NBA second team all defense. And a really fun stat on Kyle Anderson, when I was researching for the defensive teams, I found this. Kyle Anderson this season, he was the first player to be scoreless in the game. So he didn't score a single point, yet despite not scoring the ball at all, he still posted a plus 30 plus minus.
Whoa!
So he scored a plus 30 without even scoring. So that just goes to show how much of an impact he has defensively, that he literally doesn't contribute at all on offense, but he still has a plus 30.
Yeah, and just to be clear to anyone that doesn't know what that means when he was on the court, his team, the Orlando Magic, outscored the other team by 30 points.
Oh, well, actually, this was when he was on he's on the Spurs.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, still, that's really impressive.
But to make up for that, he did this against the Warriors.
Okay.
So he was on the Spurs, and it was when they won. They beat the Warriors 89-75, a low-scoring game. I'm not sure if this was one of the games where like the Warriors starters were sitting or whatever, but whatever it is, he posted, regardless of who he was playing, he posted a plus 30 without scoring, which is ridiculous. That's amazing. So that just goes to show how good of an impact he has defensively, and also he's just such a smart defender. He's so long. He's really not that athletic, and he's kind of his nickname is actually Slow Mo. But regardless of that, he's still his wingspan is long. He's tall, and he really turned something that used to be considered a weakness for him a couple years ago in his career into a strength of his, and he's a really good defender. And he's this good of a defender despite only playing like 26, 27 minutes per game. So if he was given an opportunity like in a bigger sample size, he'd probably be even more dominant defensively. So Kyle Anderson is also on my second team all defense. Then I also have Al Horford, like you mentioned. He basically anchored like the best defense in the league all year, and he was the reason that they were so good at that. Then after Al Horford, I have where is it? I have Josh Richardson. He's on the Miami Heat. Not that many people watch too many Heat games. Obviously, ever since Dwayne Wade and LeBron have been gone, but he's one of their young core players, and he's their best perimeter defender. I just encourage people to go watch some highlights of him because he's actually phenomenal defensively. He's only like 6'5" or 6'6", but he has a really long wingspan, and he's kind of a terror, and he always takes the best matchups for Miami defensively. He always guards the other team's best perimeter player, and he's just he's great. There's not that much to say about him. I'm not sure about his advanced metrics and all that, but just based on what I watched in the 5-game series versus Philadelphia and the Heat games that I watched once Dwayne Wade came back, he's really kind of made up for the defensive impact that was lost when Dwayne Wade started being old, I guess. Because Dwayne Wade, obviously once a really good defender, not anymore. Josh Richardson has sort of taken up that wing defender role that Dwayne Wade used to have, and he does a pretty good job at it. Then DeJounte Murray, he's also on San Antonio.
Oh, yeah. Great.
He's a 6'5" point guard, amazing wingspan, great player. He doesn't have much of an offensive game yet. He really thrives off of the fact that he's such a good defender. And also, San Antonio won 47 games this year, basically just because LaMarcus Aldridge was able to average 23 points per game and their perimeter defense. They do such a good job defending anybody, and DeJounte Murray and Kyle Anderson were the main reasons for that. And that's why he's here. So so DeJounte Murray along with Kyle Anderson, both members of the Spurs on this team. So, and then to fill out the team, I also have Jimmy Butler. And the reason for that is because even though the Timberwolves as a team were not very good defensively, he is still, in my eyes, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And, he legitimately made second team. And he just, he's consistently staying in front of his defenders. And because I watched a lot of Timberwolves games, I was able to track how well he was playing defensively. And he never gives up on any plays. He's always making the right plays to hustle. He's always really good at getting steals and always getting in the passing lanes. And he's just a smart IQ defender. He doesn't make mistakes defensively. He doesn't give up any easy baskets, and he makes everybody work for anything. And similarly to what I said about Josh Richardson, he always takes the challenge of defending the other team's best player. But to be honest, another reason that I have Jimmy Butler up here is because in my eyes, there really weren't many other players that I would have in his place. It wouldn't be Giannis because, like we mentioned, he had a really down defensive year with Joe Prunty. It wouldn't be Durant because he plays with Draymond. Wouldn't be Clay because Clay plays with Durant and Draymond, and Clay just in general. He's an amazing defender, and it's a shame that we can't put him on an all-defensive team. But I just don't think that he's, he does a great job defending his guys, but he doesn't necessarily shut people down. He just kind of does an amazing job with, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that he defends the other team's best perimeter player. If he defended lesser players, he'd probably shut them down at a more consistent level. But because he plays against such good talent in the Western Conference, on a nightly basis, he's either defending Damian Lillard or James Harden or Jimmy Butler or whoever it may be. He's always defending a good player, so that makes it harder for him to be consistent defensively. But just because obviously. I think I would rather have everyone else that I listed instead of Klay Thompson, but it was really close between being Klay or Jimmy, so it could go either way.
Yeah, I get that. Can you recap your team for a second?
Yeah, so I've got Al Horford, DeJounte Murray, Kyle Anderson, Jimmy Butler, and Josh Richardson.
Yeah, okay. So, first off, you got to call me out when I screw up and mix up Jonathan Simmons and Kyle Anderson. I keep saying that Kyle Anderson went to the Magic.
Simmons is on the Spurs now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not the Magic now, sorry.
No, that's just stupid of me. I don't know why I keep mixing them up for no good reason. The Spurs are kind of no names, but got to know that one. That's not really an excusable thing. So yeah, I'm a little surprised that Jonathan Simmons actually isn't more highly ranked. He's pretty good on defense himself, but yeah, I'm really happy that Kyle Anderson was high on yours as well, and Al Horford and DeJounte Murray. He just barely missed mine, and yeah, I mean there's not too much more to say on that one. Did you do a runner-up team for this?
I did not.
Okay, that's fine. I can just read off mine, and you can call me out if I have weird ones. I'll probably do like a one sentence thing for if I see anyone interesting. I had Joel Embiid for my third team. Shantae Murray, he was good. DeMarcus Cousins, despite the fact that he missed half the season. Paul Gasol, who was really underrated defensively. He had a good defensive season in the paint. I imagine that had to do with just being on the Spurs, but still, I mean, he's kind of old, and you wouldn't expect that out of him. Then after that, I had Jason Tatum. So more credit to the Celtics, and surprisingly, not credit to Kyrie Irving, which was good, because Kyrie Irving is basically in the Russell Westbrook boat. I thought for sure that he was going to be overrated by the advanced metrics, but luckily he wasn't. Then for my fourth team, I had Dwight Howard, who actually had a really good defensive season. If you look at the metrics, even like the simple ones, he had a really good block percentage, and he got a lot of rebounds, which I get. Yeah, I get that that's not defense, but if you're getting defensive rebounds, that's helping your team a lot. So there's that. Oladipo, who is a pretty good perimeter defender. Draymond Green, obviously one of the best in the league. Ricky Rubio, one of the best in the league. Derek Favors, who you can see now the big drop off from Derek Favors to Gobert. So the big thing that Gobert has is offense over. Sorry, the big thing Favors adds over Gobert's offense, but Gobert's offense is still pretty good himself. Then on my fifth team, I had Giannis. Big drop for him because he had down numbers for some reason this year. Then I had James Harden because I don't know why James Harden's there. I mean, he's just on a good defensive team and it propped up his numbers. Then I had DeAndre Jordan. Josh Richardson finally getting a call out. Yeah, he was awesome this season. I was pretty disappointed not to see him better in the playoffs because that's mainly when I was going to get the chance to watch him. But yeah, still really good. Then I had Joe Ingles for the same reason I had James Harden. After that, for the sixth team, I had Al Faruqi. Yes, I got that one right. I did not mean Luka Mbamute. Luka Mbamute. Then I had Hassan Whiteside because he actually had an okay regular season. Not great. He wasn't averaging 4 blocks or anything, but it was okay. After that, I had Karl Anthony Towns for his turnaround. Then Jokic for his turnaround. LeBron James because you got to give him some props eventually. Then I had Terry Rozier. Really happy that he got on over Kyrie Irving. Then I had Danny Green, Thaddeus Young, PJ Tucker, Otto Porter. And then for the last player on the all defensive eighth team, I had James Johnson. So, yeah, not too many interesting players here. I'm past the fourth team, but I figured if anyone's interested in hearing them, they can. Okay, so do you want to go through okay, so we can do the actual list, and then we can do how it changed from our mid-season ones. So for the actual All NBA teams, not All NBA, all defensive teams this year, they had Oladipo, Drew Holiday. Let's see, how does this work? Oh yeah, it's positionless. That's right. Anthony Davis, Robert Covington, and Rudy Gobert. So the big changes there for us, they had Gobert, which was a good thing. They had Davis, which was a good thing. They propped Covington up a bit. I mean, I don't have that big of a problem with that, but that's all right. Drew Holiday's propped up a little bit too much. He wasn't the best guard in the league defensively. He was top 5, sure, but he wasn't that good. And Oladipo definitely wasn't that good, so he's a bit overrated here. I think you can agree on that.
Yeah.
And then for the second defensive team, they had DeJounte Murray, which is great. I would have given it to Kyle Anderson over him, but that you can't go wrong there. Then they had Jimmy Butler, great player as well. Al Horford, which is awesome because I didn't think he would make that. Draymond Green, which is a bit surprising he didn't make the first team because it seems like they like to give him defensive awards, but whatever. And then they had Joel Embiid, so not too much to complain about there. All right. So for me, the biggest risers from my midseason list, which was Russell Westbrook, DeJounte Murray, Kyle Anderson, Ben Simmons, and Andre Drummond for the first team, and Danny Green, Wesley Johnson, Paul Gasol, Jason Tatum, and Al Horford for the second team. The biggest risers were obviously, well, not obviously because I don't know. Let me check real quick. So Anthony Davis was a big riser. I'm not sure why he didn't make any of my teams last year. Not last year. Over the All-Star break, that's A little embarrassing. Oh well. Andre Drummond staying about where he did. Ben Simmons staying about where he did. Kyle Anderson going up a little bit, which is good. DeJounte Murray going up a bit. Danny Green going up a ton in the midseason one. Good thing that fell off. Wesley Johnson, I don't even know what team he plays for. So, yeah.
He's on first.
Okay. Well,
he was the one who was, I don't know if you saw it, there was a really big highlight of James Harden breaking someone's ankles. That was him.
Okay. Well, they had a lot of injuries this year, so I guess they got some random players in it, I guess. Paul Gasol obviously making it. That's not that controversial. Jason Tatum, yeah. Then Al Horford. So, yeah, not too many weird ones there. What about for you?
For me, the one who kind of came out of nowhere for me was I really didn't. I had Ben Simmons wasn't on my radar at all at midseason. I also had Andre Robertson. He was much higher for me in the midseason projections, but obviously he was hurt. So he got hurt at an inopportune time because the Oklahoma City defensive rating was actually 10 times better when he was there. He was a big part of their defense, and I actually think that they probably would have been able to accumulate some more wins had he played because they really struggled to adapt without him defensively. Same goes for Paul George. I think at the midseason I had him ranked highly because of how well he seemed to be playing defensively, at least because he was playing alongside Andre Robertson. But he fell off a cliff as well. After Robertson's injury, which I'm glad that happened in a way because it sort of opened my eyes to how Paul George really isn't that good of a defender. He's just kind of propped up by the fact that he's usually playing with good defensive teammates and that kind of thing. Because I think even when he was on the Pacers, he was a little bit overrated because those Pacers teams were phenomenal defensively with like Roy Hibbert and all those guys. So
yeah,
that happened. Then also on my radar at the all defensive at the All-Star break, I had Jimmy Butler on the first team. For me, he fell to the second team. I had Embiid on my first team. He fell to the second team as well. Because obviously that had to do with Gobert's return and his impact upon his return. And he kind of got better as the season went along. But otherwise, and Oladipo I didn't have as high as he made first team for the actual team, but I didn't even think about him. Same for Drew Holiday. And same for Covington. I thought about him a little bit, but I really don't know enough about him to make any statement about him. So, but otherwise, I had Anthony Davis making first team. That stayed the same, and I wasn't surprised about Draymond Green, Al Horford, or DeJounte Murray. So yeah, there's not that much to say about the defensive teams.
Yeah, and just in terms of historical significance, really, it came down to players that didn't make an all-defensive team this year, breaking some streaks. It was the first all-defensive team since 2010 that Chris Paul didn't make. So obviously that's not good for him. Hopefully he'll make it next year. Wasn't really a good reason for him not to make it this year. It's kind of weird that neither of us had him on our list, but whatever. And then it was mostly just a ton of players who were brand new. The only players who had been on an all-defensive team before were Rudy Gobert, this being his second, Anthony Davis, this being his third, Draymond Green, this being his fourth, and Jimmy Butler is his fourth as well. So yeah, kind of a weird year for all-defensive teams because just looking at the past, past 3 years, you usually see more players as repeats. In 2015-16, you had 8 players who had already been on an all-defensive team before. 2016-17, 16 players, so certainly more than 4 usually. So yeah, that's all defensive teams. Usually we don't care about them too much. And I know the public only cares about whoever's just the best overall player, but you certainly get some nuance because usually you have like 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 players that all could be winning defensive player of the year. And it seems like every year was always a competition between Draymond Green and Kawhi Leonard, and it was just a toss-up, and it's like, hey, take your pick. This year it's probably Draymond Green versus Rudy Gobert, and essentially the same thing. Hopefully Gobert gets it just so I can say he finally got an award, but, I'll still sing his praises regardless. Okay, so now we can move on to the final all-NBA voting and the final awards that really have come out so far. Still don't understand why they do the all-NBA stuff so early in the playoffs and then all the other stuff so late, but they did. So we're going to talk about it anyways. So the rookie teams are always interesting because these obviously have the players on it that have the lowest caliber, especially as you get down to the bottom of the second team. You usually get really bad selections from the league in terms of who should make it. I would be really curious to see a correlation between search traffic for players during the NBA draft and correlate that with actual not performance, but where they landed up on the All NBA rookie teams. Because I feel like for the most part, if you just recognize the name, you'll give them a slot. Obviously, that wasn't a problem for me because I just went by advanced metrics, and if it came up with someone I've never heard of, I just said, okay, I don't really care. It makes it controversial, but it makes it a lot more interesting. So I had very interesting lists, and I'm super excited to give them. And I'm curious to see how many of the players you know on my second, all the NBA second team, because I sure as hell didn't give it to what's his name, De'Aaron Fox and Josh Jackson. They were actually the two worst rookies this year in my book. So yeah, horrible selection in terms of the NBA. I get that I like to rail against those two players a lot more than I probably should, to be honest. I'm kind of digging my own grave for when they score like 30 points per game in a season, but whatever. I'll take that bullet. So yeah, that's our little prelude. What did you think about how your rookie team turned out?
Well, for the first team, I actually thought that they did a decent job. Because I mean, that's mainly because they were just the big names like Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, and stuff. But their second team was pretty atrocious in my book. First
Okay,
team was
good.
okay, but their second team was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. So
Good. I'm glad we can agree on that. Okay. Well, I guess we can get right into things then. So for my first team, I'm super excited for where Donovan Mitchell landed. So he didn't land first. He didn't land second. He didn't land third. He actually landed fourth on my All NBA first team. So that's a little preview for, in case you can't wait the 30 seconds. For my first player, I had Ben Simmons. He's my Rookie of the Year pick. He's your Rookie of the Year pick. I don't think there's much more we need to say about him. He's an awesome player. Great defensively. Great offensively at everything except for shooting the free. That's pretty much all you need to win a Rookie of the Year and be the best on the All NBA rookie team. He's just a great player, and he made the All NBA team. So if you need a bigger vote of confidence than that, well, maybe we're talking about the 2003 draft. But yeah, he's just a great player. After that, I had Jason Tatum, which makes sense because we always talk about how Jason Tatum is amazing as well, and especially in these playoffs. So probably the best rookie performance in the playoffs that we've ever seen. Well, certainly that we've ever seen, but maybe best in NBA history. But yeah, just an awesome player, and he's really good. After that, I have my first controversial selection. I actually have John Collins, and we do know who John Collins is because we watched that Hawks Suns game in one of the first podcasts we recorded. But he's actually a really really good player, and
yeah, he is.
he's incredibly underrated by everybody. He didn't make a single. Oh, yeah, he did. Sorry, he made the second All NBA team, so they didn't screw it up too bad. But yeah, he's really underrated, and like nobody knows about him. Like I think almost everyone would take I keep saying that De'Aaron Fox over John Collins, and that would be a horrible decision because he is a really good player. And yeah, like just to give you guys an idea based on traditional statistics how good he was, 10.5 points per game, 1.1 blocks, zero point 0.6 steals, 1.3 assists. So that's not really good. But he is a forward, and then 7.3 rebounds. So that's pretty good right there. True shooting percentage of 0.62. So that's really good. And he's just a great player. And
he can jump out of like he is. There are some highlights of him doing some dunks in the Rising Stars game. He is tremendously athletic. He's only going to get better.
Oh yeah, and I can't wait for the public to learn about him because he is just awesome. After that, obviously, I had Donovan Mitchell because I eventually had to give him a spot somewhere. It would be pretty awkward if I put him on the second team. And yeah, it looks like the advanced metrics eventually came around to him. And to be fair to him, he's a really good scorer. And like this is entirely just counterculture for you and me not liking how much he's overrated by the public. He's a really good player. It's just he's not as good as everyone says he is. And he shouldn't be winning the Rookie of the Year. But yeah, awesome on offense, really good at driving to the lane. Not as good as Ben Simmons, but whatever. We don't really know how good he is defensively, to be honest. He's probably average and just boosted by the fact that he's on the Jazz. And yeah, that's pretty much Donovan Mitchell for you. And then for my fifth pick, I start to get controversial. I actually picked Jordan Bell. So it may have to do with the fact that he's on the Warriors that he's rated so highly, but he also has really good defensive numbers. So I don't know what that says, to be honest. But yeah, I think he's a really good player. He didn't play a ton of minutes this year, so it's super crucial that he had as good of overall production numbers as he did. Like he played something like 600, maybe no, he didn't play 600, like about 800 minutes this season. So that's about if I just divide that by 30, which is about how much the average starter would play in a game. That would be 27 games in a season. So yeah, not even close to like an 82 game season, but yeah, like that's what I'm talking about in terms of how impressive his overall production numbers are. That you can in 27 games have enough production to rival Donovan Mitchell alongside your rate statistics being great, obviously. And yeah, he's just a really good player. He played a lot of playoff minutes for them, and in a lot of ways, I think he took away JaVale McGee's starting center spot, so that's good. Obviously, took it away from Pachulia, but I don't think that's to anyone's surprise. But he's a really good player, and alongside Daniel Feast, who's going to come up later, I think he was a really good guy who got severely underrated by the All NBA voting panels, but he was really good, especially at the center position where there's a lot of competition this year for great centers.
All right. Yeah. So then you had Ben
Yeah,
Simmons.
Sorry, I had Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, John Collins, Donovan Mitchell, and Jordan Bell.
All right. So we actually have very similar all rookie first team. So I have Ben Simmons. All reasons you mentioned, amazing player, very efficient, good scorer, good passer, good rebounder, great defender. Far and away the most versatile rookie that came out of this draft class, and probably already like the second or third most versatile player in the NBA. Once he develops a 3-point shot, then he's really not going to have any weakness in his game. His decision making is really good. He's pretty high on the turnovers, but that's obviously comes with inexperience and the fact that he produces 8 assists a game. He's going to be passing a lot, and they're a young team, so they're prone to making a lot of mistakes. So I've got Ben Simmons, then I have Jason Tatum for all the reasons you mentioned. Good defender, good scorer, tons of potential. In my eyes, probably has potential to be the greatest Celtics player of all time. I think maybe by his third, fourth year, he's already going to be better than Paul Pierce, who I think is one of the most overrated players of all time.
Yep.
Then and obviously his playoff run speaks for itself. It was absolutely amazing. It was insane what he was able to do this year as a rookie. Then Donovan Mitchell, fantastic player offensively. I don't think that he's all that good defensively, just based on what I watched from the Jazz. I just think he's boosted by the fact that he plays with such a long, good defensive team. Derek Favors, Rudy Gobert, and coached by Quinn Snyder. So, the top 3 rookies that everybody's been talking about all year, obviously going to make my all-rookie first team. I actually also have John Collins because he's fantastic. I think nobody paid attention to him at all this year because he played in Atlanta. If he had been playing on one of the bigger teams, like let's say he had played for the Lakers or something like that, his impact would have been much more well known. Or even if he had played for maybe like the Knicks or something, I think he would have been able to do something really cool alongside Kristaps Porzingis because he's long, he's agile, he's crazy athletic, and if he just played with a competent point guard that's not Dennis Schroeder, then he probably would have been catching lobs everywhere. So. It would have been. I really feel like he'd be a super cool big man for like the star players like Chris Paul, James Harden, Steph Curry, or even LeBron. Any of those guys to play with. So I gave him some props. I have him on my all rookie first team as well. And then for my fifth pick, I have actually OG Anunoby.
Oh.
He played for basically like how you have Jordan Bell. I have OG Anunoby because. I don't think enough people think about this or realize this, but OG Anunoby actually played. He was a part of that second unit for the Toronto Raptors that basically allowed them to win 59 games this year.
Yep.
I think it was like Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, playing with I think DeLon Wright and some of their second
Siakam.
Pascal Siakam and all those guys. They were able to. They I think as their net rating as a collective 5-man unit was one of the best in the league. I think they were like a top 5 most productive lineup in the league this year. And he's a rookie, and I don't think enough people talked about that. And he also wasn't afraid of guarding, some prominent players in the playoffs. In the first round, he guarded John Wall and all those guys and Bradley Beal and all that. And then he ended up guarding LeBron James for a little bit when they got swept by the Cavs. And it was cool to see him because he was a really good defender. And similarly to Jordan Bell, I think Jordan Bell, the only reason that he fell off a little bit for me was just because I feel like he was originally drafted by the Bulls, and I just feel like if he had been somewhere that wasn't Golden State and he didn't play for Steve Kerr, where Steve Kerr emphasizes playing multiple players and the whole strength and numbers thing, I just feel like he wouldn't have been nearly as productive. And I also feel like he's just boosted a little bit by the fact that he plays on such a good team that it makes it a little bit easier for him to be better, takes the pressure off of him. So for my first team, I have Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, John Collins, and OG Anunoby. Mostly because of his defense and just the fact that he was able to make such solid contributions to such a good team at such a young age.
Oh yeah, and it was atrocious that he wasn't on the All-NBA second team at the very least, and that he was receiving as few votes as he was. I wonder if people just didn't realize he was a rookie, because I certainly didn't. I thought he was older than he was, but yeah, he was a rookie this year. He was awesome. He was obviously playing on the bench mob. That was one of the best five-man units in the league, and yeah, he was just really good, and that's all he needed to do to make my second team at least. But for my second team, I don't really get to go off the walls that much here, but at least considering what you had, but it definitely diverges a lot from what all NBA. Here, I'm just gonna read that. So my rookie team is just a lot different from what it actually turned out by the NBA, so that's really good. So for my team, I started with Daniel Feast for about the same reason that I had Jordan Bell on my first team. I think he was a really good player for the Celtics. He made a big difference in the minutes he could play. He was a real difference maker as a rim protector when he was on the court with Al Horford. I don't think he played that often when Al Horford wasn't there. I'd have to look at the actual numbers to confirm that. But yeah, he was just a really good player this year. He was really good on defense, pretty good on offense as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for that. For my second player, I had Bam Adebayo for the Heat. So I think you can make a case here that Bam Adebayo actually had a better season at center than Hassan Whiteside. Obviously, you're not going to bench Hassan Whiteside because you gave him so much money, but yeah, he was really good. And unfortunately, I don't know that much more about him because obviously nobody watched any Heat games. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got there. After Bam, I have Jarrett Allen. So this one was a big surprise for me because I had never heard of Jarrett Allen, who's apparently a center for the Nets. I know absolutely nothing about him. And yeah, good for Jarrett Allen. Okay. Then after that, I had OG Anunoby for the exact same reasons that you had him on your first team. He's an awesome scorer. He's pretty good defensively. He's a really good player. And I didn't know he was a rookie this year. So that's just more of a plus for him. And then for my final slot, I have Lonzo Ball. So I actually feel like now that Lonzo Ball is just all the hype around him has died down, like his dad shut up or whatever. He went off to Lithuania and got involved with the mob or something. I don't know. Lonzo Ball's almost become an underrated player at this point, and just in terms of he's not going to give you much in terms of his shooting percentage or just in terms of points, but that's not really what you signed him on for. You signed him on for his assists and his rebounds and just playing a good defense at the point guard position. He was one of the best defenders among the rookie class, and yeah, he was actually a pretty impressive player. And I'm glad that and he's not somebody that I have to hate because his dad shut up, and he's not overrated by everybody, and nobody's coming in and being like, "Ooh, he's the rookie of the year," when he wasn't even close to that. But yeah, he was a pretty good player this year, and obviously he's got to get his shooting mechanics sorted out, or at least score some more points, and definitely get his free throws figured out. Like, that's embarrassing to be shooting that badly from the free throw line. It's like Markelle Fultz bad, but yeah, he's got to get that figured out. So yeah, just to recap, that's Daniel Feast, Bam Adebayo, Jarrett Allen, OG Anunoby, and Lonzo Ball. And if you could shed some light on who the heck Jarrett Allen is, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, and just a slight correction. Daniel, his last name is Daniel. It's Tice.
Tice. Dang it.
So that's the pronoun. He's from Germany. He's
gotcha.
So Daniel Tice. But from Jarrett Allen, I actually don't know that much about him either because I don't think anybody watched a Nets game in a long time. But he's actually a really efficient scorer. I think he averaged 60% from the field this year, which that's impressive for a rookie. He averaged 8 points per game, about 5 rebounds. He also shot 33% from three. So if he can be a big man that can develop a stroke from the outside, then that would actually be really good for the Nets to finally have someone like that. But from what I know, he contributes as much as you would expect from a rookie. 8 points, 5 rebounds, and he's pretty athletic and pretty tall. I think he's not like some outstanding defender, but he's better than most rookies are from this draft class. Given that there really are probably only about 5-6 good defenders from this draft class. So for my all rookie second team, I also have Lonzo Ball. I think people killed him so much unnecessarily because of all the talking that his father was doing earlier in the year, which is just unnecessary and stupid because I mean, if this guy wasn't being analyzed, like he comes in under a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, it's insane how literally every Lakers game there were analysts like Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp and Colin Cowherd and all these other shows constantly doing analysis on him to see how well he was doing, and that's just stupid for a 20-year-old to have to deal with and stuff. Like that's really just dumb. I mean, people hated on him so much, but he averaged 10.7 assists and 7 rebounds. Obviously, he didn't shoot well from anywhere, but I mean, no, it's so rare that a rookie actually does shoot well from anywhere. People are giving Donovan Mitchell all the praise in the world, but I'm pretty sure he only shot 42 or 43% from the field this year. I mean, Russell Westbrook is a player who we gave the MVP last year for shooting 43%. So I feel like it's a little bit unfair to all of a sudden care so much about efficiency just because this rookie that people whose father people don't like, they're just all of a sudden hating on him. I mean, everyone loves Ben Simmons. He's averaging 8 rebounds and 8 assists, but everybody's hating on Lonzo Ball when he averaged 7 assists and 7 rebounds. So that, I mean, it's dumb. I mean, if he develops a little bit he just needs to get his shooting mechanics straightened out, and he'll be one of the better point guards in the league in a couple years. So yeah, I agree. Lonzo Ball, he, again, not the rookie of the year, not a top 5 rookie this year, but he still had a good rookie season. He was picked a little bit too high, and a lot of that is his father's fault, and that's just a lot of hype and stuff that people gave him unnecessarily. But that doesn't take away from him. I like Lonzo Ball. He did, even though he's not the best on ball defender, he does a really good job getting in the passing lanes and making a difference. He's accumulated it. I think he's already, he had a game this year where I think he had like 29 points, 27 points, 9 rebounds. I think it was his second NBA game. I think he had 29, 9, and 11, and like 3 steals, and that was his second game as a pro. And so obviously he has a lot of potential, and he's done a good job this year despite everything. And he was also injured a lot of the year, so we really didn't get to see him get into a
That's
good
right.
rhythm.
I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, he missed a lot of games. So yeah, Lonzo Ball, I give him a lot of credit. 10.7 rebounds, 7 assists is phenomenal for any rookie, regardless of how well they shoot the ball. So yeah, so Lonzo Ball. Then I also have Kyle Kuzma. He made the All-Rookie first team. I wasn't going to give him that big of a nod because, obviously he needs to make a lot of strides defensively, but offensively he's actually already a really good player. He averaged 16 points, 6 rebounds, and he shot 45% from the field and 37% from three-point range. That's actually really good. I mean, I mean, if LeBron James had a player like that on his team, who knows? And he played 77 games this year, and he only started 37 of them. So he was able to have good averages like that, despite being a bench player for a lot of the season. And he was one of the more efficient rookies this year. He shot a higher percentage from the field than Donovan Mitchell, a higher percentage from 3 than basically every other rookie. And he was good this year. He had 16.6 assists, 16.6 rebounds, 2 assists. That's great for a rookie. There's really nothing else that you could say about it. And so yeah, he was basically their best player this year, and because he was able to play in most of the games. So yeah, so Kyle Kuzma, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 45, 36, 70 shooting, which is good. Lauri Markkanen is my third pick. Similarly to Kyle Kuzma, this is mostly based on just sheer production. Lauri Markkanen, obviously people are already touting him as the next Dirk Nowitzki, which I'm not ready to do because Dirk is a player I hold near and dear to my heart. But regardless, Lauri Markkanen was able to produce really well this year for the Bulls. He averaged 15 points and 8 rebounds, which is good. He also shot 36% from 3, and he's also the fastest player in NBA history to reach 100 three-pointers. He did it in only 41 games, which is faster than Steph Curry, Damian Lillard. And, when you're ranked with shooters like that, obviously you're doing something well. So I thought 15 points and 8 rebounds was extremely impressive for a rookie. In addition to shooting 44% from the field and 36% from 3. Obviously, he's a big man, so you'd want him to be more efficient in the future. But for a rookie, I think he did a really good job. Then after that, I also have Bam Adebayo. He did great. I really don't know why people forgot about him. I think you could, like you said, I think you can make a case that he was the Miami Heat's best big man this year. Extremely athletic, really cool name. He wasn't drafted too high to the point where, you could say that he's underperforming. He was drafted, I think, at just the right spot, and he's probably going to be really good in the future. He's probably going to be the Heat's best player once they finally get all this stuff sorted out. He averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds this year, and he shot 60. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not true. I was reading his college stats on accident. He averaged 7 points per game and 6 rebounds on 52% shooting. So that's really good. 7 and 6 with 2 assists. That's great. And he barely started any games this year, so obviously he didn't have much of an opportunity. So yeah, he was great this year. So yeah, and then for my last pick, I have Jordan Bell. You had him on the first team, you just because of how well he was able to play in the system and how well he was able to contribute. I just have him on the second team simply because I didn't want to give him the first team because he plays with the benefit that no other rookie has. And I feel like I feel like if Bam Adebayo or Jared Allen or John Collins was playing on the Warriors, they'd be even better than Jordan Bell. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he still did good stuff and he was still important to their defense at times, and he filled in for a lot of the time. And he was really useful in certain lineups, when they didn't play Iguodala or Draymond Green. He really held it down for them. He's a good part of their second unit. So yeah, so just to recap, I have Lonzo Ball, Lauri Markkanen, Kyle Kuzma, Bam Adebayo, and Jordan Bell.
Yep. Okay, so just to better contextualize Lonzo Ball's rookie season, figured I would compare it to a player that he often gets compared to, Jason Kidd's rookie season. So
Yes.
just going based on traditional stats, Lonzo Ball, he had 10.2 points per game. Let's see. Here, I guess I'll do turnovers too. 2.6 turnovers, 6.9 rebounds, 7.2 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.8 blocks, and a true shooting percentage of 0.444%, or 44.4%, sorry. And then for Jason Kidd, he had 11.7 points, so a little higher on the points. 3.2 turnovers, so he actually had more turnovers, interestingly. Rebounds, he had 5.4, so that's less, but he had more assists at 7.7. Then he had more steals, barely, at 1.9 to 1.7. Then a little less blocks, and true shooting percentage, he has, he has 0.471%, so, or 47.1%, so that's pretty close, actually. That's interesting, and for anyone that says that removes him from the conversation of Jason Kidd, well, actually, and you can argue that he had a very similar season to him in his rookie year, and that's certainly a good start for Lonzo Ball if that's the kind of player he wants to be.
Yeah, I really don't understand why all the hate was there for him. If you really remove his father from the equation, people would probably be praising him for averaging 7 points or 7 assists and 7 rebounds as a rookie. Just to put it in perspective, like LeBron James, obviously a better scorer in his rookie season, but LeBron James averaged 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. So, from a playmaking and rebounding perspective, Lonzo Ball had a better rookie season than LeBron did, and LeBron is arguably the greatest player of all time. So, obviously he needs to make strides as a scorer. He'll probably peak as a scorer at around 17 to 18 points per game, but that's really all he needs to do because. If you're being honest, he's probably capable of averaging a triple double if he's already capable of averaging 7 rebounds and 7 assists. He led his whole team in rebounding for most of the year up until Julius Randle had a kind of a mid-season breakout. He's one of the better rookies that we've seen. He's probably better than every player that was drafted last year. I'm trying to think of who was drafted. I think because last year's draft class, in my opinion, was actually pretty weak.
Yeah.
It was other than Ben Simmons, but he didn't play. And then Brandon Ingram, I feel like hasn't really been all that good. And then Jaylen Brown, I guess you could say. But once you compare, he's up there. If you were to pick 10 to 12 players picked in the last 2 drafts, he would definitely be up there. So I really don't get why everyone gives him so much crap when he actually had a pretty good rookie season. And hopefully he proves people wrong next year.
Yep. And just for context, Lauri Markkanen, he was on my 4th team, so that's not too far down for him. And then Kyle Kuzma, he was on my 3rd team. So, yeah, you did pretty well as well. And, now we get the fun part. We get to compare the actual All-NBA one to ours. Oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, actually, did you do a runner-up team?
I did not.
Oh,
to be honest, the only reason I didn't was really just because it got to a point where I literally didn't know any of the players.
No.
Do you remember when we kept talking about the Jazz and Thunder series and we kept saying R. O'Neal for Royce O'Neal?
Yes.
Yeah, I realized he was a rookie and that he actually received some all rookie votes. So I got to players like him, and then I recognized some of the players, but it really just got to a point where I was I really can't make a case for why I have Frank Ntilikina over someone like Semi Ojeleye, or why I think anything about Sindarius Thornwell. I just don't know anything about the players to talk about it, so I just avoided making the runner-up team.
No, absolutely. I don't blame you there. And all I had to do was just look at numbers, so obviously I had the much easier job there. So I figured the fun thing would be just for me to read down my eight all rookie teams, and you just say if you know them or you don't know them. Okay?
All right,
So starting with the third team, we have Josh Hart.
I do know him.
Okay. Then we have Maxi Kleber.
No. Oh, he plays for the Dallas, right?
Yes.
I've seen him, but I don't know anything about him.
Okay. Then we have Kyle Kuzma, who you obviously know. Then we have Ante Zizic.
I do know him. He's on Cleveland, but that's the only reason I know.
Yeah, he didn't play a lot of minutes, but he was actually really good in the
Yeah,
minutes.
he actually, when he plays in the right minutes and right rotations, he contributes really well.
Yeah, that could be very interesting in the next couple of years. Maybe play oh correct. God, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Play Mr. Z role, Zydrunas Yoklauskas. Is that his
I
name?
I don't know him at all.
Oh, I think we talked about him in the last
Oh,
podcast, but
Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
yeah.
Zydrunas Ilgauskas. Oh, I thought you were saying there's another rookie with a similar name.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, you're right. Ante Zizic could be kind of like the next Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
Yeah, and I'll pretend that I actually know more about that comparison and know about Mr. Z's career. But yeah, actually, I think it's Big Z. Why am I calling him Mr. Z? That's just weird. It sounds like your teacher.
Mr. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, maybe Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know. But then I had Bogdanovic. I'm assuming you know him.
Yeah, dude. Good shooter. Actually made second team, but he shouldn't have.
Yep. And then we had good old Royce O'Neal. Yep.
I know him only because we talked about him.
Yep. Good for him. Then we have Lauri Markkinen, who you know. Then we have Luke Kennard.
I know who I don't know who he is. I've seen him, but no. I know he plays for Detroit though.
Gotcha. Then we have Milos Teodosic, who you know. Then we have Sindarius Formwell.
Don't know.
Okay. Then we have Terrence Ferguson.
Yes, he's on the Thunder, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, but the only reason I know about him is because, again, I watched that playoff series and Andre Robertson wasn't there, so I realized he was filling in for him.
Yeah, he's actually really good on defense as well.
Yeah, I've heard about that, actually, but yeah.
Okay. Then we have Torrey Craig. I don't even remember what team he plays for.
No, I've never heard of him.
Okay. Then we have Tyrone Wallace.
Nope, don't know at all.
Okay. Then we have Semi Ojeleye.
Yeah, well, I know that because of Boston.
Yep.
Brad Stevens makes the most of everybody.
Okay. Then we have Zach Collins on the Trailblazers.
Yeah, I've seen him. He's a tall white guy.
Yep. Okay. Now we get into the bad rookies this year. The other guys were pretty much just average. So now we have for the sixth team Wesley Iwundu.
No.
Yeah.
He's on the Magic, right? I think he's on the Magic.
I'll check. I'm actually curious. Let's see. Come on. Wesley Iwundu. If he's on the Magic, well, Yep, Magic doesn't speak highly to him.
Yeah.
They're not exactly good at developing players. Okay.
Yeah, they're bad.
Then we have Dylan Brooks, who sucked.
Yeah, he was on Memphis. I know that, but I don't know anything about him.
Yeah. Then we had Justin Jackson, who also sucked.
Yeah, that was weird how the Kings stockpiled on all these young players. Dylan Brooks actually averaged 11 points this year. That's
really?
kind of 11 points. But he shot 44, 36, 75. So, his stat line was actually, he played all 82 games, but I think it's just because nobody gave a crap about Memphis this year. Nobody cared at all.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's kind of interesting. Oh, well. Then we have Frank Mason III.
Yeah, I just know he's on the Kings. I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, poor Kings. We have a lot of Kings players down here. Then we have Dennis Smith Jr., who is one of those guys that's highly rated because he gets a lot of points, but that's all he does, and he doesn't do it.
He averaged 15 and 5, but he didn't even shoot 40% from the field this year. He deserves some of the same flack that Lonzo Ball did, but another reason that he played so well is because he was just given he was given the opportunity to know this is your team because Dirk is done. So,
Yeah. Okay. Then we have the seventh team, so 6 more players. We have Tyler Dorsey.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Not good. And then we had Malik Monk, who really sucked.
Yeah, I know who he is, but he's not good.
Yeah, one of those former Kentucky players that looks like a bust right now. Then we have Jawoon Evans.
No.
Yeah. No. Then we have good old Frank Nicolina.
Yeah, I'm fairly familiar with him. Frank Ntilikina.
Okay. Then we have the Def trio down here, and that's not the Warriors' Def. This is like they might as well die. We have a DR. That's harsh. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. That was not cool. Uh, yeah, I have nothing wrong with these two players, but I'll just say they're really not good. And don't die. That was not funny. That was just stupid. Okay. Well, that really woke us up. Okay. We have De'Aaron Fox, and then we have Josh Jackson.
Yeah, they're Josh. See, here's the thing with Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson is actually a good defender. He's just so bad on offense.
Yep.
Actually, Josh Jackson did have a 30-point game this year, but besides the point, I think because he plays for Phoenix, it's just so difficult to wrap our heads around the idea that he could even possibly be good.
Yeah, and
But
his defensive numbers are probably hampered too, just because he's playing on such a horrible defensive team.
he's he's a pretty good defender. He's actually probably the best individual defender from this draft class, other than he'd be the best because Ben Simmons isn't from this one.
Yeah.
Oh well, his competition is Jason Tatum, but yeah.
And then De'Aaron Fox, get a life insurance policy. You're gonna need it with all those riots.
He's so bad. People only give him a second look because he hit 2 game-tying shots to send the game to overtime this year, but then they ended up losing both of the games. He's just so I don't. He's so bad. He's another player that didn't nearly as criticized as he should have been. He also, I don't think, shot above 40% from the field.
Yeah, I'll check right now, but yeah, that's pretty terrible. I'd really be curious if he didn't shoot above 40% in true shooting percentage, because obviously that really wouldn't be good. And let's see how he did. No, he's actually okay in that 47.8%, but that's because he had good free throw shooting at least. No, he didn't. He had 72% from free throws, and he's a point guard. That's not good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Okay, well, he's not very good, obviously. And just to give an idea of how the NBA thought about this, so I'll just go down their list. They had Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Kyle Kuzma, and Lauri Markkanen. So they kind of overrated Lauri Markkanen a bit. Kyle Kuzma, I guess you can put him on there, whatever. And then the top 3 are obviously fine. And then for their second team, this is when it gets bad. It gets really bad. Okay, so I'll start with the good. They had Lonzo Ball and John Collins. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, that's it. Josh Jackson is on that team.
Yes.
Way. Dennis Smith, no way. Bogdanovich, no way. His best game all year was in the Rising Stars game, which didn't even count.
Yeah, compared to the other two, he's half decent, but he isn't deserving.
Yeah, no, he can shoot, but there's just no way that. It's weird how they do the all rookie teams. If you're a specialist at one thing, you can really make one of these teams. It's awful.
Yeah. So who's your biggest snub from there?
I think OG Anunoby. But you could also give it to Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
Either one of those two, I think, is fine. I think just for me, it's OG Anunoby because I would be sort of annoyed if it's I know that I'm individually one of the best rookies this year, and my team won 59 games, and I'm not getting any sort of honor for it. Meanwhile, Josh Jackson is on that dumpster fire of Phoenix, and he plays decent defense for a couple games, and he gets to make a team. I would be pretty annoyed if I were him.
Sweating it out in the desert. At least he's giving him some defense. Poor guy. Wait, are you serious? Do you know what De'Aaron Fox's nickname is?
Swiper the Fox.
It is Swiper the Fox, yes.
From Dora, yeah, that's dumb.
Wow. Okay. Well, how many steals does he get? Oh, he gets 1 steal per game. Okay. Well, I guess that's all right. But Lonzo Ball got 1.3 or 1.7, so yeah, I guess he's the new Swiper. But yeah, okay, that's interesting. All right.
Yep.
That's probably the only thing I like about him now. Okay. Well, I didn't do a rookie team for the midseason projections, so obviously I can't compare it to that. Did you do a rookie team?
Actually, I did. I had a midseason rookie projection.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I thought first team all rookie would be. I thought it would be Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Kyle Kuzma, and Lonzo Ball. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So yeah, it's actually pretty close, other than just Lonzo fell off a little bit because he wasn't able to play. Then for my second team, I thought it would be Frank Ntilikina, Bam Adebayo, Josh Jackson, because I thought that he would find a stroke offensively and just be decent. and then I also had who else? I had Milos Teodosic, but he also got hurt.
Yeah.
So basically, all the second team basically got changed up just because of injuries and just people were just awful. But I mean, yeah, no, their all rookie teams are really bad. I mean, and they're usually pretty bad.
Yeah, and just to give some perspective, so I thought it might be interesting to go through the past 2 years rookie teams, just call out some of the really bad players on it. Like, I don't care if you were really good and you were on the rookie team. That's not interesting. Good for you, Joel Embiid. Good for you, Malcolm Brogdon. But what about players like, let's see, who's an interesting one here? We have Marquise Chris. He hasn't turned it around at all. Actually, that's pretty much it from last year's. They did an amazing job with last year's. Holy crap.
Last year, what was last year? Malcolm Brogdon, Dario Saric, Joel Embiid, Buddy Hield, Willie Hernan Gomez.
Yeah, and then Jamal Murray, Jaylen Brown, Marquise Chris, Brandon Ingram, and Yogi Ferrell. So Marquise Chris is the only bad guy there.
See, Yogi Ferrell had a weird year, though. He only had like a couple weak games.
Yeah.
He was actually worse this year than he was last year.
Yeah, no, I can get on board with that, but at the very least, it's better than this year's.
No, but see, the weird thing about him is that he only played 46 games and he made a team.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever. It is weird. It's okay. I mean, he helped Dirk out, so he has my thumbs up. But like, I mean, the fact that like the weird thing is that I don't like is how like Malcolm Brogdon won Rookie of the Year even though he only averaged 10, 4, and 3. And the only reason he won it was because they refused to give it to Joel Embiid because he didn't play enough games.
Which they should have.
Yeah, which is just weird. But like, I mean, then why wouldn't they have given it to Dario Saric? Like, he averaged 13 points and 6 rebounds. So, I mean, that selection was just kind of weird. But it is what it is. And I guess it's because the Bucks made the playoffs.
Yeah, probably, and also not many people were talking about Dario Saric.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's that certainly. And just going back to the year before that, the only really bad picks were Julio Loco. Oh, crap. Why am I on the Denver Nuggets page all of a sudden? Did I click on something? I don't know. So
Loco actually had a good rookie year, but I don't know what the hell happened to him. Like, he's just a horrible now.
Yeah, he's the Nets' problem now. And then
Cully Stein also horrible pick.
Yes, and that's pretty much it. But yeah.
Oh, and Emmanuel Mudiay.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I keep thinking he's going to break out, and he never does. Because he's good on offense, but he's god-awful on defense.
He actually had a pretty decent rookie year. He had 13 points and 6 assists, which is pretty good, but he's been horrible ever since. He averaged like 9 points this year. So
yeah, the best thing that the Nuggets ever did was trade him. Like, finally that got done.
Yeah.
Okay. And they actually got some good value on him, but whatever. So that's our rookie team. So, yeah, I'm really glad we saved this for another time when we didn't try and cram it in an hour, because it took 2.5 hours. So at this point, we're not going to do that Hall of Fame thing as we talked about over text. That doesn't make sense to do right now. So I think the best thing to do is to go over that free radical ideas thing that I was talking about. So, okay. All right. I guess we can get started then. So for the free radical ideas, this comes from a podcast I was listening to the other day. It is actually a baseball podcast, but I feel like the ideas apply really well to all sports, actually. And it was just like them talking about this one guy who wrote a column about free radical ideas that could change the baseball, and basically the free ideas were every team makes the playoffs. And I thought this one out, and I think I actually have a fantastic solution that is a lot better than what we currently have, and I think you're going to love it, actually. So every team makes the playoffs, that's one. Then 2, you pay players by commission and not by contracts. So, like, you get paid based on your statistics or your performance and not based on your past performance. So, you know what I mean by that. Like, someone like, trying to think of an example, Hassan Whiteside, let's say. So he goes to free agency, and the previous year he had like 4 blocks or whatever he had. Maybe it was probably like 3.5, but still. Like, he gets a ton of blocks, and he was an awesome defensive player, and he gets paid a ton of money based on what they expect from him in the future based on his past performance, and then he makes a ton of money for playing horrible the next couple of years. So you pay players by commission. They get a new contract every year based on their previous year to pay him for that. And then after that, the third thing is any team can sell their home games to another team, and that game turns into a road game. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have let's say it's the Suns, or not the Suns, that's a horrible example. trying to think of a team that had really bad attendance. Let's say the Grizzlies. So they have bad attendance, and they know that they're not going to make a lot of money from a home game. So they sell their game to the Knicks, and then they get some of the Knicks have to pay for that game, obviously, and the Grizzlies can just charge higher than what they would make for their own home game. So they make money instead of having a wasted home game and then not having anyone in the stadium and having all their players sad or whatever. So those are the three ideas. So I'm going to start with first of all, give me your initial impressions of them before I dive in more.
No, yeah, that actually seems like a pretty fair thing because like the one thing that I hate is like how like it basically would curb this entire issue where like players get signed to these long-term big deals, but then they end up like being completely awful right after they sign. Like J.R. Smith, for example, was actually decent, and then he got signed to like a $28 million deal, and now he's just you can't even play him. And like same thing with like players like and like it would also curb the whole injury thing, like Mike Conley and how like the Grizzlies basically aren't able to get up from under him because they paid him, and now he's always hurt and all that stuff. So I mean, yeah, overall, it's a pretty good idea.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with every team makes the playoffs because I think this is, if not the most controversial one, it's the one that deviates the most from what we're used to. So
Right.
I'll start with how they described it in regards to baseball and then how I transitioned it to basketball. So within baseball, how they would do it is they would end the season early for the worst teams in the league, and then the 15th worst team in like one league would, because they do leagues and not conferences, but it's the same principle. They have the 15th worst team, just the worst team in the league, face the second worst team, and then the winner of that moves on to face the 13th team. And then the winner of that moves on to face the second, the 12th team, and so on and so forth until you get to the top team, and then whoever wins that game faces the other team, winner of the league, and then they face for the World Series or something. So basically, how I think what do you think of that right now?
Well, I mean, initially, obviously, I'm skeptical of it because I feel like it would just be pointless to have teams like Phoenix playing the Warriors or whatever. But I mean, if it's getting somewhere, then
Okay.
we'll see.
Well, here's my change that I think makes it really interesting for us. So I say change this so that the season ends early for the worst teams in our divisions. So this is tagging along with our idea for changing the division alignment. So you have the 1 through 5, the top 5 teams in each conference in one division, and then the middle 5 teams in one division, and then the bottom 5 teams in one division. You end the season early for the worst teams in the 2 bottom divisions. And by the 2 bottom divisions, I mean in each conference, not just in like the 2 out of 6, like the 4 out of 6 for like the bottom teams within that division. So let's say maybe the 10th best team and the 15th best team and the 14th best team and the 9th best team in each conference end their season early. So after that, they play each other. So the 5th worst team in each division plays the 4th worst at that point. And by each, I mean those 2 divisions, so like 2 of the 3 divisions. The best division is still hashing it out because you would assume that those are the best players still. And then the team that wins that would go on to face the 3rd best team, then the 2nd best team, then the 1st best team, who's still playing games at that point up until finally playing the winner of the rest of the division, basically. And then after that, they play the bottom division, whoever came out of that. And then after that, the winner of that would go on to face whoever comes out of the top division, which after about 2 or 3 series into the division below that has started playing games. So let's say these are all treated as best of 7 game series. So in terms of the NBA playoffs, I'm trying to think of it right now. So the NBA playoffs take about, give or take 2 months. And that's also with the NBA finals stalling it out a little bit. So let's say you can get about 2.5 series per month. I think that's more than reasonable because if you think about it, the NBA playoffs usually start middle of April, and then by the end of May, you're done with the conference finals in each. So that's just do that real quick. So 3 divided by 1.5. Oh, okay. Well, that's actually exactly 2. Well, never mind. Then you can get 2 series in per month. So let's say you have to get here. You have to get the 5v4 series in, and then you have to get the next one in against the third, the next one in against the second, the next one in against the first. So that's 4 series right now you have to get in. So let's say you're ending the season at like March for those teams at the very bottom, and like they play from like March 1st to like March, I don't know, 14th or whatever. They have their in that best of 7 game series. Then they play their next one against the third. Then they, which goes to the end of March. They do their next one against the second, which goes to the middle of April. Then they have their next one against the best in their division, and that goes to the end of April. So at this point, you're at the end of April, which is when usually you're done with the first round of the NBA playoffs, and you're down to, let's see, so here, let me count this out for myself. So you have 3 teams left in the top division in each conference, and then you have 2 teams left outside of that. So that's 10 teams total that are left. So that's actually super close to how it is usually in the NBA playoffs, where you would have 8 teams left at that point heading into the second round. You only have 10 teams left here. So that's pretty good, right? You're not even losing that much time, and that's just by having like 4 teams end their season early around March 1st to play the playoffs instead of wasting their time in games that nobody was going to come to anyways because they were the worst teams in their division. So after that, you just have the 2 bottom division winners face each other, while the whoever's made it that far in the top division is facing the number 2 team in the top division. So let's say the Warriors this year, and then after that, whoever goes on to win that. I'm actually realizing now that the top division would have to start a week earlier, but that doesn't matter. I don't think anyone's following my train of logic, anyways. I should put up like a flow chart or something just to make it easier to follow. But basically, the idea here is that the worst teams get to end their season earlier because they weren't going to make any money, and they get to have playoff games instead that also carry national TV revenue, so they make more money. They play in higher profile games. They're given better stakes, and they have a greater incentive not to tank because no matter what you're not going to get like a great. Well, maybe you will get a great draft pick. That's not the point, but you are always benefited by winning more games because the better playoff seeding that you have, the fewer games you would have to win to actually make it farther in the playoffs. So, like the difference between being a the third best team in a division versus the fourth best team in a division is a huge one. That's a whole best of 7 playoff series that you wouldn't have to play. So that's really big. And just give you an idea of like how many playoff series you would have to win if you were the very worst team in the league, just to show you that like it would take a lot for like that big of an upset to happen. You would have to win 7 playoff series, like 7 best of 7 series, to make the NBA Finals as the worst team. So I don't think there's a good chance that you would. First of all, I don't think there's a good chance you would make it past 1 or 2 rounds. Maybe you would beat like the second worst team in your division, but you're not going to make it much farther than that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about like if having like a Warriors versus. I'm trying to think of a bad team in the East. Warriors versus Nets in the NBA Finals. I don't think that would happen exactly, but yeah, I think this is interesting because it creates more playoffs. It saturates the playoffs, yes, but it changes what the playoffs mean exactly. And like anyone that doesn't want to see the early round matchups, it can be like the NCAA tournament where like you don't have to watch those games. Those games still matter because it's not completely random, but you don't have to watch them. So that's a plus for them. Obviously, NCAA tournament, bad example because all anyone watches is the early matchups, but whatever. I'll ignore that for now. And then the other great thing is I'm trying to think of the other great thing. I don't know the other great thing. That's good enough on its own. It saves teams. It saves teams from playing meaningless regular season games that don't matter to them. It gets them into playoff games instead. It creates more revenue for the league. It doesn't harm them by getting rid of regular season games that don't matter. And the teams that do need to be playing more regular season games to determine their seeding, the top teams in the league, they get to continue to play them. So I think that's really helpful. So what do you think about all that? Are you still with me?
Yeah. I get it. No, it makes a lot of sense. It would actually be pretty cool to see that in practice. I just feel like the only issue with it would be just only, but not an issue necessarily because obviously this is just fantasy and stuff. But I just feel like it would be unrealistic to implement. But overall, the idea is actually really cool.
Yeah, I'll do like a mock-up or something, or like a video just showing how it would work. I'll probably draw it on a piece of paper or something, just to show what's actually happening for anyone that can't follow it, because it is confusing, and I get that. But I think it'd be really interesting to see. I think And a good comparison for how it would work would be the NHL style playoffs. Not in regard to like how many teams make the playoffs, but how it works divisionally. Where like the first team that you play, like in the first round, you have to play one of the teams from your division, and then in the second round you have to play the. Actually, that's not exactly true. In the first round, you really play whoever. Here, okay, I'll back up. So basically, how seeding works in the NHL is you get free teams are okay. I gotta back up even further. So how much do you know about the NHL?
Not much at all.
Okay, so I gotta really back up here. So here, let me take off the microscope. So basically, the NHL is organized into 4 divisions, 2 per conference, with them one being like well in the West there being 2 8-team division eight. Is that even true? Yeah, 2 8-team divisions, and then in the East, 1 8-team division and 1 7-team division. And playoff seeding is determined where you get 3 guaranteed spots for each division, and then you get 2 wild cards. And the top 6 seeds are always the division teams. So in the first round, you would have like obviously the best division winner face the worst wild cards, and like it just falls from there. And then, as you would imagine, that creates situations where you have like the third worst team in one division maybe not being as good as the best wild card, but they don't really care in the NHL, so whatever. But the big thing is that makes like this bringing like the whole hockey discussion into this is in the second round you have to face the best remaining team from your division. So like it creates rivalry matchups, and that's kind of the idea here, where you continue the rivalries from the regular season, and you continue like in the NBA. If I get that the NBA doesn't really have rivalries, but well, yeah, so it doesn't really make sense. But it would make sense in a situation where you have, let's say, the Suns and I'm trying to think of another bad team, maybe the Lakers if they were a little worse, bashing each other against the wall in the regular season. Like they were always playing each other. It's like, ooh, the Suns and Lakers. Who's going to be worse? Who's going to have better seeding in the playoffs? And then they have to play each other to move on. So like you have to face all of your division foes before you can move on to face other people in the NBA playoffs. And I think that's a cool thing about the NHL, where you can have a situation where the Capitals, like every year in the second round, they're having to face the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it becomes a really big rivalry. It's like, ooh, are the Capitals finally going to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins? And literally 3 years in a row, they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round, despite being an amazing team. And then this year, they finally beat the Penguins, and now they're in the Stanley Cup, and it's amazing. And it really feels like you powered through your division, and like you finally made it past it. And I think that'd be a really cool thing to see in the NBA as well. Okay, so do you have any questions?
No, I think I follow it pretty well. It makes sense, but I mean, I actually didn't know that about the whole hockey thing and the Penguins.
Yeah, I don't know why I follow so many different sports and like know just so many random things about all of them. I just don't know why, honestly. But yeah, I could talk about hockey all day. So yeah, Stanley Cup. That's a thing right now. So yeah, that's my idea about every team makes the playoffs. I think that would be really interesting to see an implementation for. Maybe I'll make like a simulator or something just to show what it would look like. But yeah, and I guess you guys will know. You'll see it in the description if I did. But yeah, definitely. And that's one of the ideas. It's certainly radical enough. So then the next one is pay players by commission. So essentially the principle here is players are not being paid based on what you expect of them based on their past performance. So like it's getting straight to what you're actually trying to do. What's the goal of free agency? It's to reward a player for how well he performed. So why are we doing some workaround where like we have to pay players based on what we expect of them, and why not just pay them based on what they actually did? So the idea is very complicated in practice, as you would imagine. And I didn't read the article that they wrote, so I don't know all of the exact intricacies. I'll probably have to come back on the next podcast to talk about like how this would actually work, because I'm sure the writer has a much better idea than I do. But my thoughts on it were you would create like a giant pool of money and do it like based on revenue sharing or something. I don't know. And players would be paid based on. Actually, I don't really have any idea how this would work, to be honest. Do you have any ideas how they could do pay by commission?
I guess you would just, rather than paying them on like a contract, I guess you could like you would I guess you could like assign like a certain like number, I guess, to be paid like per minute that they play, and then like if they like you could like add like incentives, I guess, like if you score like more than 15 and you get this, and then like if it's more than 20 you get this, more than 30 you get this, and then like same thing with like 5 rebounds, 10 rebounds. The more you get, the more you get paid, I guess. But then like at the flip side, like you would have to make it obviously such that you should like you have to get paid every game, I guess. So like I guess you would pay them every game. You basically do it on a game by game basis, right? And then I guess you would have every player get paid at least something, because obviously like you need a job, right? So like I don't know, let's just say like for every game you get paid, I don't know, like 30, 40, $50,000, whatever it is. And then everything that you do on top of that, you get more money, right? So like for LeBron James, for example, right? Like he get his 30,000, and then let's say his 51, 8-8 performance, given how amazing it was, you could up that, and that could be, let's say, like a $500,000 performance or whatever. Obviously you would have to, then you would have to factor in like efficiency. You could reduce, like you could take money away for every turnover or everything like that, and take money away for, I guess, how many, like if you miss like an absurd amount of shots or anything like that. And I guess you really just have to base it off of their performance. And like, I would deem like James Harden's 60-point triple double, I would call that like a $500,000 performance. And then like Steph Curry's performance last night, where he only had 11 points and shot very poorly from the field, I would call that maybe like a $60,000-$70,000 performance.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to quote off of the article here so that I actually give you guys an idea of how this works. So here, just to quote it, and I'll paraphrase a little bit where I have to. So to quote, here's the simplest version. Half of the league's revenue is put in a central fund contributed to proportionally by teams based on market size. This money is for player salaries. For math purposes, call it $10 billion in revenue and $5 billion for player salaries. So, and then after this, just for context, the big advanced metric in baseball is called wins above replacement. It's a similar idea to win shares, a little different, but essentially the premise is like that's being used here is you can be paid a certain amount of money, or here, let me back that up. So there's wins above replacement conversion to money, and like just in terms of how valuable is it if you have one win above replacement, how valuable is it if you have 2 wins above replacement? And the premise here is everyone gets that converted into money based on the central fund. So to go back to the article, there are 1,000 wins above replacement available in Major League Baseball in a Major League Baseball season. That's just because it's a zero-sum game, meaning there's a certain amount of wins that can go around in a season. Divide the $5 billion by 1,000, which is the total wins above replacement, and that's what a win is worth. So just in this hypothetical would be a win would be worth $5 million. So every player on the 40-man roster, which is essentially the same thing as like a 12-man roster in the NBA, so you can just think of it as that, gets a base salary at the major league minimum. So everyone has a minimum salary. It's kind of the same idea that we had for changing college basketball's payday. Beyond that, a player's salary is entirely determined by his performance, paid out of the central fund so that cheapo, small market teams don't risk getting hammered by overperformance. This is true of minor league veterans, claimed off okay, this is just baseball terminology. If a team wants to bid more than the going rate for a win, so let's say you had a 2 win above replacement player, so he should get paid $10 million, but you want to have him on your team, so you want to pay $11 million for him, then you may. But based on a player's performance, the team must pay the overage out of its own pocket. So if in that case, the team would have to pay $1 million for that player, not the $11 million. Okay? Player compensation will never dip below the floor guaranteed by the central fund. So everyone is guaranteed a certain amount. The total amount of money going to the players overall is guaranteed by that central fund. So like if that central fund is $10 billion, then overall all the players in the league are going to get $10 billion one way or another. So let me see if there's anything else that I should point out here. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so do you have any questions based on that? Because I think that might help.
No, I think that's pretty clear. I'm not having any issues following. It makes sense.
Okay, because I am, to be honest. I'm not sure how player acquisition would work. So I don't see if it's like a bidding process where, like, let's say LeBron James. Let's give that example. So let's say his contract is worth $15 million. I think it's worth more than that, but that's not really the point for this discussion. So let's say it's worth $15 million. So would he just become a free agent, and then everyone would bid and say like, "Hey, I want LeBron James, so I would pay him $25 million," and the Lakers are like, "I would pay $100 million," and
Yeah. I guess bidding would probably be the best way to do it. I mean, because I think that gives a level of player freedom as well. Because, like, I mean, obviously they should be able to turn down the bid as well. Because they're not like slaves or anything. It's not like they have to play where whatever. They should just be willing. And like, I feel like similarly to how the free agency is now, they could like even adjust and like a team could, like, let's say like a team like the Lakers, let's say they offer and they're like, we'll pay you $40 million, but then once they actually bring him in to negotiate, they can like talk to him and sort of like a free agency meeting and talk about like, oh, what if we offer you 35 and then we use the extra 5 that we're not paying you to try and bring in this player or bid for this player or whatever. So that could work. I think you just have to do it in a way like a bidding system would work, because I'm assuming like the players who are looking to make money would obviously go and meet up with the, like, I feel like you can just bid higher to secure a meeting. Like, you can use that, I guess, as a bargaining chip for you to secure a meeting, and then given once you bring them in, then that's when you can start talking about whether or not you're actually going to pay them that much money, or if you're going to cut down on it a little bit so that you can bring in star talent, and basically just to secure a meeting with them to see whether or not you can convince them to come play for you.
okay, I think I'm beginning to understand this. So it's not actually based on the total contract. All of free agency is based on the overages, or in economic terms, the crap. I just completely lost it. Okay, well, forget the economic term. I'm not going to sound smart. I'll just call it the overage, whatever. So for going back to that Lakers example, everything is paid based on your performance in that season. It's not based on the past season. It's based on that season. So let's say the Lakers say, whatever you get in terms of your wins above replacement or win shares or whatever statistic you're using, we will pay $5 million more than that. So that's how all these contracts are determined. It's not some $100 million contract, which was the erroneous way I was thinking about it. It's you're getting paid by your performance and then some by the team. Okay, I think that makes sense, and that explains where all the teams' payments are coming from. Then, so nobody's getting paid below their performance. It's just everyone is getting paid more, but it makes sense now because like the lower market teams can pay that because like they're not paying out as much as they used to in the system where they have to pay for all of the contract of a player in the system. The Knicks or the Lakers are paying for some part of that contract because they are contributing the most to revenue sharing. So, okay, I think that all makes sense to me. So, and what I like about that then is obviously players are getting compensated based on how they should, but it's better than the max contract system because it seems like the revenue is more evenly distributed then. Because let's say, let me just pull up a win shares leaderboard NBA. Let's say you're just using win shares as an example. I don't know exactly if that's the best statistic to be using, but whatever. I'll use it for now because it's better than using VORP for this example. So for win shares, the leaders in the league this year was James Harden with 15.4, then Karl Anthony Towns with 14, LeBron James 14, Anthony Davis 13.7, and then you go down to 20, and it was Jimmy Butler with 8.9. So based on that, James Harden would make twice, well, not exactly twice, but about twice as much as Jimmy Butler, and he would make about 15 times as much as some rookie that played like 1 minute in the NBA. So does that seem like a fair system?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't pay James Harden twice as much as Jimmy Butler, but the thing about like getting paid 15 times more than a rookie who plays 1 minute, then yeah, that's fine. I just feel like we would have to make some sort of disparity at the top about like making it a little bit closer. Because I mean, I would probably play like James Harden a little. I wouldn't pay him that much more than Jimmy Butler.
Well, let's say a win share is worth $3 million. So based on that, James Harden would get $45 million for that his performance the previous season. So like just basically he gets that in a pay stub. Stephen Curry would get $27 million for his performance. Giannis would get $36 million. LeBron James would get $42 million. Jimmy Butler would get $27 million. That doesn't sound like a terrible system right there.
Oh yeah, no, that's not that bad. I was just thinking like if like like if James Harden was getting paid 40 and Jimmy Butler was getting paid 20, that seems a little bit high for Harden, I would say.
Well, yeah, but you can make a case that the best player in the world already isn't paid enough. You can make a case that on an open market where there wasn't a max contract, LeBron James would make like 50 million a year instead of 23 or whatever he's.
That's true because with endorsements they all make a different amount anyway, so I guess it's really not that big of a deal.
Okay, so I think that's all there is to that idea. I'll obviously touch on these again when I actually read the articles, but I just wanted to bring these up on this one because, well, I had like half an hour to kill and I figured that it could be an interesting discussion. But the last one is a system where teams can sell their home games. So there's actually precedent to this, believe it or not. I didn't believe it originally. So this comes from South American football. So obviously soccer then, if I'm pronouncing it like that. So essentially the precedent is, let me pull up the precedent. Come on, where's the precedent? Come on, load reminders. Okay, there we go. So here's the precedent for selling home games. So there was a soccer team in Brazil, and that team didn't want to go to have a home game because it wasn't making a lot of money from attendance and ticket sales. So basically, what it did was it treated it treated its home game, and it just said we're going to have a road game instead of that home game. But at the other team's stadium, all of the ticket sales, and like that's where the game happened instead of. So like bringing it back to the NBA example, let's say the Nets don't want to host a home game at their at the Barclays Center because I don't know, maybe they have a hockey game or something going on, or like they just aren't getting good attendance and like good ticket prices. So let's say they're playing the Knicks, which would be kind of weird because like they're right next to each other, but whatever. That happens once every season. So they have a home game against the Knicks. They don't want to play at home. They want to play at Madison Square Garden because they know they're going to make more money there. So what they do is they treat the road game as a home game, and they get the profits from all the ticket sales at Madison Square Garden. So all the concessions and stuff would still go to the Knicks, and like any other revenue that they get, maybe like television broadcast or whatever. But it's all of the ticket sales go to that other team, and that's what happened with the Brazil team. Now, that's not exactly how I would want it implemented. I'm just giving you an idea of what the historical precedent is here to make an unrealistic system seem more realistic. So what I would want exactly is I want a team to be able to treat their home game as a commodity and just basically sell it on the open market and say who wants, well, not open market, but give it the possibility of selling it to the team that they're supposed to be facing in the game. So let's say you have the Nets Knicks example again. So the Nets, let's say they know they're going to make, I'm trying to think of a realistic number here, they're going to make, I don't know, 2 million from, no, that's too much, maybe like $500,000 from putting on the one game at the Barclays Center. And they know that the Knicks, by putting the game on at Madison Square Garden, they would make $4 million. Or here, let me make the number a little nicer. They would make $4.5 million by putting the game on at Madison Square Garden. So basically what the Nets say is, look, if we can make more money by getting rid of our home game than putting it on and using up our very useful arena, which we also use for hockey and a bunch of singing performances, if we can just sell that to the Knicks for this one game and make more money, why wouldn't we do that? So they sell that game and they make $2 million in profit when they would have only made $500,000 in profit or revenue, whatever. And that's that. So that's the system I would want to see where like every game is sold for the average of like how much on average is the other team able to make from putting a game on at their stadium or arena, and how much are you making on average from putting on a game at your arena. And whatever the average of that is how much the game should be sold for, and then that's that. Because it could get a little dicey if it was or if it was more open market, because you could just have like the Knicks putting a stranglehold on them and be like, "Ooh, we'll give you the game for $1 extra, and you don't have a choice." And I don't like that. That's kind of creepy. But yeah, so that would be the system. I think I'm trying to see if there's any loopholes there. I don't think so. What do you think?
No, I don't think so either.
Okay, so obviously the only problem there would be that it would be fewer home games for the team for the fans of the one team. But if they're not coming to the games anyways, that's kind of your fault. Like, sure, if you're the one person that comes to every game, it sucks for you. But I mean, like, you can't be looking out for like the one or two people when there's like 20,000 seating stadium and only 5,000 people are coming to every game. So I don't think you can take them into account.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so that's the system there. So in terms of which ones you think are, well, here we'll do this. So which proposal that every team makes the playoffs, pay players by commission, or teams can sell their home games, do you think would be most likely to be implemented in the NBA? And which one do you think would be best for the NBA?
I think best for the NBA would probably be the first every team making the playoffs. Just because I feel like it would kind of create more of, I guess, a buzz for each team. Because like if every team is, despite it being such a slim, small chance, if every team has a theoretical chance to win it all, right from the jump, then I think it just kind of completely changes, who gravitates to what team. Because you'll no longer have the people who are like, oh, dude, like shut up, your team didn't even make the playoffs, because like every team's in the playoffs. And given some injuries and stuff, like if injuries happen at opportune times and stuff, then really any series could change. So I think that would just make the entire NBA just a little bit more compelling. Because also what that does is it allows for teams that like just barely miss the playoffs, like for example like the Denver Nuggets this year. Like if every team made the playoffs, then they would still be in the playoffs, and that would make for compelling matchups even more. Because we might be able to see like a Nuggets versus who Nuggets versus Rockets instead of the Wolves versus Rockets that we saw. Or we might be able to see like um, you know I'm not sure what was the other team that just missed the play with like the Clippers, right? Like maybe they can actually play the Blazers or something instead of it being like the Pelicans or whatever. Like you get to see more matchups, I think, especially when the conferences are a little bit tighter, especially like how the West was this year. So I think that would make the NBA better. As far as for what I think would be the most realistic, I think it'd probably be players getting commissioned by, their by their per game thing. Because I just feel like the CBA, like in terms of all the owners, I feel like all the owners would probably agree to that. Obviously, it probably would have a tough time getting ratified by the players, because everyone's going to be like, oh no, like I want my guaranteed money. But you probably have all the owners agree with it. Whereas I'm not sure about the whole home selling your home game thing. I'm not really sure how that would go over with owners. So I'm not sure how easily that would be ratified or whatever. But I know that at least for the player commissioning thing, I'm fairly certain every owner would be okay with that, because I don't feel like they necessarily like having to guarantee money to people. Especially like a player like Chris Paul, who apparently like he wants like a max deal for the next 5 years, but obviously an owner is not going to want to be paying him $43 million as a 37-year-old. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. I see what you mean there. Personally, I do think they could make a lot of money from selling home games, but that's also coming from the perspective of baseball, where you have a much bigger problem with attendance than in the NBA. Like in the NBA, the worst it gets, I don't actually know how bad it gets. Let me look up average attendance in the NBA. I'm going to guess right now that the Grizzlies have the lowest at 12,000 per game. I have no idea if that's correct. Let's see. No, it was actually the Hawks had the lowest at 14,500 per game. So that's actually a lot better than I thought it was. So yeah, the NBA is even less of a problem than I thought. Think about that. That's about, well, the average capacity for NBA arena is what, 18,500. So here, let me do that number real quick. So 14,500 divided by 18,500. Yep, that's 78% capacity. So that's still pretty fantastic. And if it's 18,000, that's 80%. So you're talking about 80% capacity. So that's pretty freaking awesome. And that's compared to baseball, where you can expect really bad numbers. Like I'm talking about like attendance being like 12,000 per game for stadiums that can fit like 40,000 people on average. So like you're talking more closer to like 30% capacity versus almost 80%. So that's the difference in the problem there, and probably makes more sense for baseball to do that than the NBA. Okay, that I'm satisfied with that. Then for the every here, I guess I'll give which one I think is most realistic and then least realistic. So I've hmm. So I think the playoffs one is actually the most realistic. 'Cause I think that owners and GMs would have a much bigger problem with the pay players by commission than you think, because it would basically be like the NBA has 1 year contracts for everybody, and like every year players could be moving around the league. And honestly, I don't know how big of a problem owners would have with that, because obviously their biggest concern is just returning a profit. But you got to think if TV contracts are being considered, because those aren't
Oh,
um,
that's yeah.
like if you don't have like marquee players on your team, or like you do one season and then like they're all gone the next season, then yeah, like that's going to make it very difficult to have financial stability and convince somebody that like you really want to invest in my company, like you want to give us a really good TV deal and like improve Memphis's TV deal. So yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right. I didn't think about that.
and
Yeah. I mean, because you're right. Because if they could just leave every year to year, then they wouldn't want that because they'd never be able to actually secure anything to secure like a financial like exactly what you said. Like they wouldn't be able to secure any sort of financial stability if they constantly have players moving in and out.
yeah, and I would be really curious to see how big of a problem this was exactly, because right now they really don't like the system where someone like Alan Crabb can be making $20 million a year for doing absolutely nothing, or someone like Marcus Smart who is not good, just making a ton of money. And yeah, like just a system like that, obviously they don't like that either. So I would love to talk to like an ownership guy about like which system do you like better. But yeah, it's I think it's pretty close either way. So I'd be curious to see simulations on that. But the playoffs one, why I think that would work. The only reason I think this is realistic is because the NCAA tournament exists, and it's not the same premise as the NCAA tournament. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of just kookiness and like off the wall playoffs, I think that the NCAA tournament shows that a thing like this could work. And yes, you're gonna have a ton of pushback and like everyone being like, "Oh, I don't want to see my playoffs change." But I think they would get over it eventually if it was actually a fun system. And plus, the other two ideas we kind of disproved. And what was the other question I asked you? I asked you which one was most realistic, and then what was the other one?
I think it was most realistic and least like most likely to happen, and then least likely to happen. I believe it was.
Oh, okay. So least likely to happen then probably home games, because it doesn't make sense in the NBA, unfortunately. Okay. So I think that all makes sense. That's all pretty good. Working on a diagram now of how this playoff system will work. So I'll show you this after I'm done recording this podcast, and I'll put it in the description so you guys can already see it if you want. But yeah, thank you all for listening. We talked about the NBA Finals, first 3 games. Next time you hear from us, we're going to be talking about how LeBron James needs to work on his legacy, or does he? And we're going to talk about how the Warriors have won 3 out of 4 finals and how they're a potential dynasty now. We're going to talk about how well, what are we going to talk about? We're probably going to do award previews because that's going to be coming up the next week. We're also going to be talking about, let's see what else. Well, I don't have to worry about that right now. We'll see. So, yeah, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to give us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting player you happen to use. Make sure to check us out on YouTube at Topical Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. Give us a subscribe, hit the bell. You got a reason not to? Just do it for fun. Humor me. Give us a like. That'd be nice. Just click on a bunch of the videos, have them open in all your tabs. Don't worry, they won't think you're a robot. I'm the robot here. Alright, goodbye.